Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I, a disciple of the god of law, became the biggest villain at the beginning. Chapter 61. The moment the scroll was torn, the majestic magic elements surged from 1,000 miles in radius. A huge funnel formed in the sky, and then exploded. Endless water spread from the void, like a river pouring back, and in just a moment, the entire mountain forest was submerged. Each drop of this water weighed 1,000 pounds, and when it hit the ground, it immediately created a big pit. When it hit a person, the flesh and blood body immediately turned into powder. It can be seen that the dense forest within hundreds of miles has turned into a swamp. This is exactly the forbidden spell of water magic huge waves. The wood dragon Ellison suddenly suffered such a forbidden spell, and his huge body was immediately smashed to the ground. Horrible scars appeared on his body. Blood flowed out of it, fell to the ground, and gathered into small puddles. However, these puddles were made up of bright red blood. Arison was lying on the ground, his huge eyes looking at Hansen not far away, with a hint of resentment in his eyes. This forbidden spell was a full-strength attack from a senior holy mage who had entered the forbidden spell field. It had just reached adulthood, which was comparable to the field level. Although it had endured it, it had also paid a considerable price. If it wanted to recover to its previous state, it would take at least hundreds of years of sleep. Human, he cursed inwardly, then stood up with difficulty, flapped his huge wings and left directly. The human world was too dangerous. He wanted to return to the dragon's nest to recuperate. When the giant dragon left, Hansen finally couldn't hold on and fell to the ground. Several of his female companions came up and checked his body with concern. After finding that he had just exhausted his magic power, they breathed a sigh of relief. The fire forbidden spell was certainly not so easy to cast. Even if he was sealed in it, it would take a huge amount of magic power to activate it. Hansen was only a 7-star grade magician, but he wanted to draw out all the power. You know, the full force of the holy magician who has entered the forbidden spell level can reach a radius of thousands of miles. It can almost sink the earth and break the sky. How can such a powerful power be exerted by a small 7-star magician? Hansen was lucky that he didn't drain Hansen dry, but only consumed his magic power. This magic scroll was obtained by Hansen when he was exploring an ancient secret realm. The owner of the secret realm was originally a powerful holy magician, but because he encountered a powerful monster, although he killed it, he was also seriously injured. After returning to his cave with difficulty, he could only leave his inheritance, and then sealed his lifelong cultivation in the magic scroll, hoping to protect the young magician who would inherit his inheritance in the future. When Hansen got it, countless years had passed since the anti-magic scroll. The power was lost, but it was also because of this that Hansen was not drained and became a dead man. Lin En, who was standing far away and watching the battle, saw all of this scene. He couldn't help but sigh. The Son of Destiny is indeed worthy of being the Son of Destiny, and the trump cards to save his life are really endless. Now he is only at the level of a 7-star grade magician, and he can get the Holy Magician Scroll of the Forbidden Spell level. God really cares about him. He thought so in his heart. But then, looking at Hansen's current state, he showed a smile, but it's the end. With his eyes, he can see clearly. At this moment, some changes are happening in Hansen's body. Mox. It is exactly the plot that Lin En expected to see. Lin En covered his body and watched the development of the plot. At the same time, because Hansen cast a forbidden spell, many people who participated in the battle were covered by the forbidden spell and died. But some adventurers had been on the periphery before and had not come. When everything settled, they walked slowly to explore with doubts, hoping to get the upper hand. This naturally included Joanna. She carefully avoided the popular areas, but relied on her keen sense of smell and superhuman insight to explore at the edge of the battle. Soon, she found a hidden entrance. Most of Ellison's treasures were carried by him, but a small part was also left in the cave. In the east belly, Joanna saw piles of gold coins and various items. Joanna did not touch these gold coins, nor did she use those powerful magic weapons, but looked for various books. She knew very well that in this world, only knowledge and skills are the most important. After her search, she soon found a thin book in the book. This is a secret book that allows warriors to practice. It can make people truly step into the path of knights. Seeing this, Joanna immediately smiled. She finally found the way to become stronger. She simply flipped through it and then put it close to her body. Joanna found a few other secret books at random, then grabbed a handful of gold coins and left. She didn't even look at the other things. It's not that she didn't want to take it. But she knew it very well. Many things, once you greedily take them, you will definitely die. After Joanna left, the dragon's cave was also found by some adventurers. 0. Oh, treasures are attractive, and for these treasures, adventurers fought fiercely. The whole dense forest was full of red-eyed adventurers. For the sake of treasures, they mercilessly killed everyone they saw, just for the dragon treasures that might appear on them. This fight lasted for a full month before it gradually stopped. According to the summary of some people who cared about it afterwards, there were only less than 1,000 people who died at the hands of the dragon. But the deaths caused by Hansen's forbidden magic and the killing of humans accounted for thousands of people. But the families and relatives of these dead adventurers all placed their hatred on the dragon. Because of this incident, a short wave of dragon-slaying fever swept the continent. Countless young adventurers hoped to kill the dragon, shouting to win peace for humans. It has to be said that this is really a huge irony. On the other side, Hansen was also sent to the town by his companions to recuperate. It has been a month since Hansen lost his magic power and fell into a coma, and he still hasn't woken up. Hansen obviously didn't have any injuries on his body, but he didn't wake up. His female companions tried every way, but couldn't find any reason. Therefore, several female magicians were also caught in endless quarrels all day long. In such a quarrel, they neglected to take care of Hansen. However, none of them knew. At this time, Hansen was experiencing the threat of life and death. Hansen found himself in a chaotic space. In this space, he was illusory, like a soul. Where is this? Why am I like this now? Hansen murmured, with a hint of confusion in his eyes. He remembered very clearly that in the fight with the dragon, he could only take out a magic scroll because he was defeated. Although the dragon was seriously injured, he was also drained of all his magic power and lost consciousness. But now, he reached out and touched himself, but found that his palm went straight through his body. He had become illusory. He looked around, but saw chaos all around. Only in front of him, there was a small lake, in which flowed a familiar and unfamiliar power. This is. Feeling this familiarity, Hansen, 320, was stunned at first, and then exclaimed, "This is my spiritual sea of consciousness." When he thought of this, he suddenly found that he seemed to be able to accept external images. He could sense that his body was lying in the house, and he could also tell from the changes of the sun and moon outside that he had been in a coma for a month. He could even hear that his female companions had fallen into a quarrel because of his coma. He wanted to drive his body to stand up, but found that his body had no reaction at all. He could feel everything outside, but he couldn't make his body do anything at all. What on earth is going on? At this moment, he suddenly panicked. Why did I come to my spiritual sea of consciousness? How can I get out? Hansen was shocked, and a silent fear gradually spread. Just when he was worried about this, a black shadow suddenly appeared in the spiritual sea of consciousness in front of him. This black shadow was in the shape of a person, but it was a little incomplete, with a hint of weakness. However, the aura emanating from the black shadow frightened Hansen, and his soul could not help but tremble. Such a breath, such a might. It was stronger than the strongest holy magician he had ever seen. What on earth was going on? Why did this thing appear in my spiritual sea of consciousness? Thinking of this, Hansen asked loudly, "Who are you? Why are you in my spiritual sea of consciousness?" "Who am I?" Facing Hansen's questioning, the black shadow floated in front of Hansen. Under Hansen's rather nervous gaze, the black shadow smiled, with a relaxed demeanor, and said with a smile, "I was 30,000 years ago, roaming the sacred continent, known as the Dark God of Law, and my status was only second to one person and above 10,000 people. Who do you say I am?" Boom. These words made Hansen's heart tremble instantly, and the whole person was stunned. 30,000 years ago, roaming the sacred continent, Dark God of Law. Hansen looked at the black shadow in front of him in disbelief, and was frightened and speechless for a while. Looking at Hansen like this, the black shadow sighed, with a look of emotion in his eyes, and said, "Alas, it's a pity that things have changed. After 30,000 years, the world doesn't even know me. After that, he kept his eyes on Hansen. Young, you are lucky to meet me now. I can give you a great fortune. What fortune? Hansen asked subconsciously. Offer your body to me and become a springboard for me to return to the mainland. The black shadow laughed heartily and said loudly. As soon as this sentence came out, Hansen immediately understood. Is it to seize his body? Impossible. You want to seize my body, this is absolutely impossible. Hansen subconsciously refused. I don't care who you are, get out of my body, get out. He, it's not up to you to get out or not. Besides, you are just a little thief. If I hadn't fallen into a coma and caused my system to be lost, how could you have obtained the golden finger and reached this level now? Now, I have seized your body, just to collect some interest. Your body, your woman, everything you have, from now on will become the nutrients for me, the dark god of law, to step back to the top of the continent. The black shadow laughed strangely, and then the whole person pounced on Hansen's body. When it fell on Hansen's body, the black shadow instantly dispersed, forming tiny insects, lying on Hansen's soul, gnawing everywhere. Hansen's soul was shrinking rapidly, visible to the naked eye. Soon, it became only 1 foot high. Watching himself being eaten, Hansen's face showed fear. He struggled to drive away the bugs, but no matter what he did, the bugs stayed on his body and gnawed his soul. Feeling death approaching, Hansen lied more and more. Impossible, impossible, I am the son of destiny. How can I die here like this? I want to reach the top, I want to reach a higher place. I must not die, I must not die. I am the son of destiny. The roar became weaker and weaker. At the end, accompanied by a scream, it stopped completely. In the entire spiritual sea of consciousness, only the sound of crackling was left. After an unknown amount of time, the gnawing sound finally disappeared, and all the bugs regrouped and returned to the shape of a human. When he looked at it again, he found that the originally incomplete figure was now complete, and even more solid. Quote. He burped, with a satisfied look on his face. It must be said that the lucky guy who occupied his golden finger, although his character was not very good, his soul was very delicious. It made him savor it leisurely. The soul can be found slowly, and now the most urgent task is to occupy this body first. Muttering this sentence, the black shadow glanced at the spiritual sea of consciousness, and then the body dispersed and occupied it. The process of occupying the body is very easy. With his secret method of taking over the body, plus the fact that the soul of the original owner of the body had dissipated, it was almost no difficulty for him to have the control of this body. Feeling the qualifications of this body, the high-level magic talent of fire attribute is also good. This made him very satisfied. System, check my current situation. The black shadow whispered softly. However, what he didn't expect was that when he shouted, he found that the system that protected him when he was unconscious did not respond at all. This made his face change. He had a bad premonition in his heart. And this premonition became a reality after he searched carefully. My system is gone. What is going on? The dark magic god 30,000 years ago. Now, Hansen's face changed drastically, and he subconsciously shouted. Hansen, are you awake? How is your body? Are you okay? You've been in a coma for a month. We were so worried about you. Outside the house, the women who were arguing stopped arguing immediately after hearing Hansen's shouting, and all rushed in. When they saw that Hansen had woken up by himself, they all smiled with joy. However, at this moment, Hansen had a gloomy face and frowned. There was a fierce look in his eyes. His system was gone. He was originally a person 30,000 years ago, named Kate Jean. He was originally the son of a commoner, and later he accidentally got a magic notebook. After studying, he realized that it was actually dark magic. Dark magic has always been excluded from the orthodox magic world because it requires blood sacrifice when practicing. Once encountered, it will be hunted down. Before he learned dark magic, he was just a commoner's son. How could he understand these? Therefore, one time when he killed a bully who spoke wildly to him on the street, he was recognized. From then on, he began his escape journey. In the process of fleeing, in order to survive, he began to use some cruel blood inspection methods. He tortured the lives of a village or a town to death. Later, His strength became stronger and stronger, but the number of people chasing him also increased. In order to stop the endless pursuit, he simply went all out and sacrificed the lives of the people in a city, which eventually angered the magic world. 3 holy domain wizards surrounded him and killed him in the mountains. He thought he was dead, but who knew that he suddenly got the system and got a chance to live again. With the power of the system, he reshaped his body, and then learned from the previous lessons, hiding his identity and secretly performing blood sacrifices. He grew up very quickly. In just 1 year, he became a magician of the holy domain level with the help of the system and dark magic. The day after he became a holy magician, he killed the previous pursuers. His 3 holy domains, beheading. After taking revenge, his behavior became more arrogant. Not only did he sacrifice civilians everywhere on the holy continent, even dark wizards could not escape his clutches. Both the orthodox magic world and the dark magic world offered a bounty on him. But he had the help of the system, and all kinds of trump cards emerged one after another. Those who were chasing him were not his opponents, but were killed by him in various ways. In this way, his strength increased rapidly. Domain wizard. Forbidden spell wizard. Celestial wizard. Finally, he became a god of magic. He became a god of magic with dark magic, achieving a feat that has never been achieved before and will never be achieved again. Looking around, there was no rival on the land. At this time, it was difficult for him to find an enemy. He began to build his own dark magic empire. At that time the empire once reached its peak under his pressure. His power also rose. He himself became a dark true god walking in the world. He was revered by the world as the dark devil. Even the church had to stay in a corner under his pressure, and even the gods did not dare to be presumptuous in front of him. He began to gradually indulge himself, indulging in wine and every day. Later, he finally felt tired of such a life and wanted to pick up dark magic again, hoping to take a higher path. But what he didn't expect was that he was betrayed just when he was about to succeed. His subordinates, 4 dark wizards in the sacred realm who were highly expected and trusted by him, secretly attacked him together with the orthodox magic world. All his subordinates were connected by them. They formed an unprecedented magic formation and trapped him in it. Then the god of the orthodox magic world, Vino, personally took action and killed him. At the last moment, he roared and asked why. The subordinates who had been placed high hopes and trust by him said indifferently, "You are too cruel. We are all your loyal subordinates. We hope to follow you to go higher and further. We regard you as our faith. But you treat us like a dog. Since you don't regard us as human beings, why should we find a master for ourselves?" Excuses. Excuses. All are excuses. I trained you to become a sanctuary wizard. Everything you have is given to you by me. To you, I am your God. As a servant of God, what qualifications do you have to resist God's will? All of you. He roared in his heart. 30,000 years have not made the anger in his heart any less intense. How could it calm down? Instead, it became stronger with the passage of time. This time he came back. He wanted to return to the peak again, and then kill all those who had betrayed him. He wanted them to live in pain and endless torture forever. He is back. He got Hansen's body, and from now on he will replace Hansen's identity and be active on this continent. He thought he was going to start his invincible road again. But what he didn't expect was that before his invincible road began, he found that his biggest trump card for rebirth and rise was gone. What's going on? Why is my system gone? He panicked. In his previous life, he relied on the system to survive countless life and death crises and become the dark god of law. For him, the system not only it is his trump card and his spiritual pillar. As long as the system exists, he can face anything without fear. But now, when the system disappears, he is completely confused. "Hansen, are you okay?" Just when he was confused, a voice sounded beside him. Hansen's 3 female companions asked fiercely. They looked at Hansen's twisted and resentful face, and for some reason, they were filled with fear. A speechless terror climbed up their hearts, making it almost difficult for them to restrain their steps and want to escape from this place. The man in front of them was obviously the person they were most familiar with. But at this moment, why did he become so strange? They were puzzled. They were even more puzzled. But they could only be in their hearts. I told myself that maybe Hansen had been in a coma for a month and had not recovered. But even though I told myself that, but I still felt a little regretful. If I had known this would happen, they should have left Hansen without hesitation like the 2 women before. Yes, there were 5 women who followed Hansen. During the month when Hansen was in a coma, 2 women left without hesitation because of quarrels and conflicts. They wanted to pursue a new relationship and start a new adventure. Only the 3 of them stayed with Hansen for various reasons. However, they did not expect that although Hansen did not look like Hanlin at the moment. But in fact, under this shell, the core inside has been replaced silently. I'm fine, of course I'm fine. Hansen grinned, but this smile looked eerie and terrifying. People who saw it couldn't help but shiver all over, and a chill surged from their backs. The 3 female companions were also stunned when they saw this scene. Hansen, they subconsciously wanted to say something. But unfortunately, they were interrupted by Hansen before they finished speaking. But you guys are in trouble. After saying that, Hansen suddenly laughed while the other 3 were still stunned, and then a black shadow emerged from his body and rushed out. Halfway through, the black shadow split into 3 and directly fell on the faces of the 3 female companions. The next moment, SSG, the shrill screams sounded one after another. But then they stopped abruptly. After a while, the 3 figures had completely disappeared, replaced by 3 piles of gorgeous clothes on the ground. The flesh and blood in the clothes had been eaten clean. The black shadow returned to Hansen's body, trembling all over at first, and then Hansen returned to normal, with a satisfied look on his face. He burped and said intoxicatedly, I haven't tasted the taste of blood food for 30,000 years, it's really delicious. After devouring 3 magicians, my strength has recovered a little, but it's not enough. The system is my biggest trump card, but now it has disappeared. If I want to return to the peak, it will be difficult. Quote, is there going to be a large area of blood? He thought so in his heart. Although he is practicing again now, he was a dark magic god in his previous life and mastered many powerful dark magics. Even if he practices again, few people in the same realm can be his opponent. Blood sacrifice can definitely improve his strength in the shortest time. But after all, the risk is too great. Before his strength is truly improved, once he is discovered, he will face endless pursuit again. It's really abominable. If the system hadn't disappeared, how could I face such a dilemma? When I practice again, I will definitely find out the reason. I want to see who is plotting against me. He said a cruel word in a sinister way, and then looked at the house. The 3 living people are dead and can't die anymore, and there is nothing for him to linger here. He cleaned up the 3 piles of ashes, and then eliminated the traces of his use of dark magic, and then strode away from here. Although he did not think there would be a knowledgeable magician in this remote town, and he just happened to see this pile of ashes by chance, it is better to be careful. He had a lot of margin for error when he did it again, but it was still troublesome, wasn't it? He thought he was doing it in a hidden way, but he didn't know. All of this was seen by Lin En. In a house in the distance. Lin En looked at the water mirror in front of him, which showed the body of Hansen. He walked on the street very vigilantly. Because the core inside was replaced, as a former dark magic god, his temperament was naturally incomparable, and he stood out among the crowd. At the same time, there was a unique evil aura of the dark magic god. Combined with his appearance, it attracted the attention of women. Lin En couldn't help but smile. This is really a big drama. It must be said that such a plot is worth his interest. But it was still not intense enough. It seems that I need to add some fuel to the fire of this drama. Muttering to himself, Lin En had already made a decision. He took out a magic stone for communication from the storage ring, engraved a paragraph, and then activated it with magic. This was the treasure that Vino gave to Lin En before he left. No matter how far apart they are, as long as they also have the magic stone, they can obtain the ability to transmit information, allowing the other person who has the magic stone to get the news instantly. Lin En briefly explained the situation of the suspected appearance of the dark wizard here. At the same time, he also judged from the other party's spellcasting method that he had recorded it in a magic book, and recognized that this seemed to be the inheritance of the dark magic god 30,000 years ago. That's right, Lin En just wants to speed up the plot. Show his identity directly. He believes that once Vino gets this information, he will never sit still. In this way, the magicians on the continent will want him. At that time, this newly reincarnated god of law will definitely take risks to survive. So he is on a dead end. And he becomes a behind-the-scenes mastermind, watching this big drama. Sure enough, after Lin En passed the information to Vino, just after the communication ended, less than a quarter of an hour later, Lin En felt his magic stone shining. He activated it with magic, and at the same time pulled it towards a certain kind of chi. Soon, the chi was successfully constructed, and Vino's voice came from the magic stone. Lin En, did you see that method with your own eyes? Vino's tone seemed a little hurried. My teacher, greetings to you. Lin En was not in a hurry, first greeting, and then said, of course, I accidentally discovered it when I was traveling around the continent and passing through a small town. Backquote, how do you know that this is the method of the dark god of magic 30,000 years ago? Vino asked. You know, I like knowledge very much. Lin En said, I have seen this method in the books of the Royal Palace Library. I found that this dark magic is unique to the dark god of magic 30,000 years ago. Although it is very similar, I dare not confirm it, so I came to ask your opinion. I have seen that it was you who killed it at the beginning. I think you should know something about this dark god of magic. Vino's voice came from the other side. You guessed right, this is indeed the method of the dark god of magic. If I'm right, he should be back. His voice was filled with vicissitudes and nostalgia. Back, yes, although this is incredible, I can be sure that this is definitely his own work. Is it not possible that it is his successor or successor? Lin En pretended not to know and asked in shock, you have clearly killed him. Vino was also a little confused and puzzled about the return of the dark god of law. But he still firmly believed that this was the other party himself, although I am also shocked by this, I can be sure. This is indeed him. This is incredible. Lin En pretended to be shocked. Listen Lin En, now the matter is not something you can solve. The dark god of law is very powerful. Although his cultivation is not high now, he has many strange methods. 11. Vino said solemnly, for your safety, don't interfere in this matter. I will send senior sanctuary mages from the academy, and even join forces with the sanctuary strongmen of the empire to surround and kill him. If necessary, I will go to the top in person. And all you can do is stay away as much as possible to ensure your own safety. Of course he would not get involved. As a spectator, you must be aware of watching the show. So, Lin En smiled and said, follow your arrangements. The dark god of law, who had wreaked havoc on the continent 30,000 years ago, has returned. This is certainly a big deal. Vino took it very seriously. After the call ended, he immediately contacted the Holy Empire. Both sides sent strong men from the Holy Domain to encircle and kill him. 30,000 years have passed. Perhaps ordinary people on the continent and even the newly promoted Holy Domains do not know about it, but the old Holy Domains that have lived through a long time have witnessed that era with their own eyes. The Royal Library also has records of the brutal dark god of law. They all know very well what kind of harm this dark god of law will cause to this continent once it rises again. Therefore, they all take it very seriously. On the second day, the Saint Laurent School of Magic and the Holy Empire each sent people, a total of 12 Holy Magisters, plus 7 Holy Domain Knights, to the area given by Lin En to prepare for encirclement and suppression. Although they had never seen him, they had a portrait given by Lin En. In addition, Lin En also intercepted a trace of breath, so as long as they saw and sensed it, they could detect it. At this time, the dark god of law did not know that he had been targeted. In order to avoid being exposed, he killed those monsters in the dense forest for blood sacrifice. This caused his strength to improve very slowly. Half a month later, he recovered to the level of a 5-star great magician. Such a speed, if it were someone else, would be shocking. But the dark god of law was still very dissatisfied, but for the sake of safety, he had no choice but to accept this reality 487. However, what he didn't expect was, while he was still slowly improving his strength in the dense forest, at this time, a Saint Domain strongman had accidentally discovered his aura. In order to find the dark god of law, the Saint Domain strongmen were scattered in the dense forest, and at this time, there were only 3 Saint Domains nearby. In order to prevent this person from escaping, the 3 Saint Domains had to send a message to other Saint Domain strongmen while directly attacking. The 3 Saint Magisters were all veteran Saint Domains who had entered the realm level and immersed themselves for many years, and they used their strongest means as soon as they made a move. In an instant, a rain of fire poured down from the sky, covering the surrounding area of hundreds of miles. All the trees in the area covered by the range were ignited in an instant, and the entire dense forest turned into a sea of fire. Sudden such a blow, the unprepared dark god of law was injured immediately, but fortunately he was in the realm of god of law after all, and had a life-saving trump card on him. Relying on this, he barely supported himself. Soon, the rain of fire dissipated. Seeing this, the dark god of law also breathed a sigh of relief. But before he could completely relax, a meteorite fell from the sky. A meteorite with a diameter of hundreds of meters fell from the sky and hit him directly. Then there was the freezing cold that penetrated into the bone marrow, and hundreds of miles of land that had just been ravaged by the rain of fire were covered with ice and snow again. All he saw was a piece of white. 3 consecutive sanctuary-level magics were cast, causing the dark god of law to be seriously injured. When he was dying, he activated his life-saving trump card, consuming a very painful price, teleported thousands of miles away, and escaped from this area. When the sanctuary mages saw the dark mage running away, they began to evade the dark mage in a carpet-like retreat within a radius of 10,000 miles. The dark mage was already seriously injured, and in order to avoid such a pursuit, he could only keep moving, like a mouse. This made it impossible for him to relieve his injuries. What the hell is going on? Why are there so many holy mage masters chasing me? Did they find my trace? How is this possible? In a cave that was temporarily opened up, the dark mage was pale and looked like gold paper. Feeling the holy mage masters whistling in the sky from time to time, he couldn't help cursing in his heart. Until now, he didn't know why he was being hunted. He was now sure that the holy mage masters in the outside world must have known his identity. But this shouldn't be the case at all. He had just revived, and he had not exposed himself in front of anyone. The only time he used dark magic in a human town, he only devoured 3 female companions, and then he eliminated all traces. Afterwards, he only used dark magic in the dense forest. How did these magicians find his trace? The dark god of magic was puzzled. In fact, from the moment he woke up to now, he vaguely felt that his every move seemed to be under the surveillance of others. It seemed that there was an invisible hand behind the scenes fiddling with his fate and future trajectory. But as the dark god of magic, he didn't believe that anyone could fiddle with him behind his back. It's really strange. After sleeping for 30,000 years, has the world really changed so much? The dark god of magic had a fierce look on his face, feeling the breath of the Holy Land outside, and feeling his weakness at the moment. He knew that he couldn't go on like this. If he didn't recover from his injuries, even if those Holy Lands still couldn't find him, he would probably die from his injuries. At the same time, if he wants to change such a fate, he must improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Only in this way can he be freed from the endless escape. You forced me to do this. The dark god of law gritted his teeth and said fiercely. He has decided to perform a blood sacrifice. That night, the dark god of law dragged his seriously injured body, hid in the dense forest during the day and went out at night, and spent several days returning to the original town. This is the largest human gathering place in the surrounding area that he knows so far. Here, he can increase more blood food. With his experience and knowledge from 30,000 years ago, he arranged a huge magic circle around the town, covering the entire town. This magic circle is the blood sacrifice formation in the dark magic. Once it is deployed, all the creatures in the formation can be deprived of their flesh and blood in an instant and turned into loans. In his previous life, he relied on such a formation to exterminate the human beings in a city overnight, and hundreds of thousands of people died in his mouth. But now, because of his injuries and insufficient cultivation, and the occasional appearance of the Holy Land's aura, he arranged the formation very slowly to prevent being found. It took him 3 days to finally complete the formation. If it weren't for my injuries and insufficient cultivation, I could have completed such a formation in an instant. Now it takes 3 days, these magicians. When I recover my cultivation, I will devour all of you. And Vino, you wait. The hatred of past and present lives will be settled for you. Outside the town, a young man wearing a cloak looked at the gradually prosperous town and said harshly. If there were students from the Saint Laurent School of Magic here, they would definitely recognize him as Hong Lin. But at this moment, under Hansen's appearance, the soul of the dark god of magic was hidden. The handsome boy in the past has become pale and weak because of his injuries. In addition, he often uses dark magic, and he also has a gloomy and terrifying aura. He glanced at the residents of the town with his cold eyes, and then walked out of the town. Wait until my blood sacrifice is complete. Everything will be different, he thought to himself, and his hands that were hanging down unconsciously clenched. The dark god of law thought that he was doing it secretly. But he didn't know that everything he did was carefully watched by two pairs of eyes. I didn't expect that an old man from 30,000 years ago could actually be revived and wake up. Looking at the direction where the dark god of law left, Vino was quite emotional. Although the dark god of law was his enemy and had been killed by him personally, at this moment, looking at the familiar aura on this person, the emotions that emerged in his heart were still nostalgia and emotion. In the past 30,000 years, many of his old friends and acquaintances have fallen under the invasion of time. There are not many left. Beside him, Lin En stood aside, just smiling, not speaking. And Vino was just reminiscing, and did not show any mercy to the dark god of law. For the existence of the god of law, time can no longer stay on them, and old acquaintances and old friends are just passers-by in their long lives. Some people are destined to accompany you for a period of time, and then they will leave halfway. You must learn to adapt. Otherwise, your long years can only be spent in endless remembrance and sadness. Vino naturally understands this truth. What's more, the dark god of law is still his enemy, and reminiscing about him is just a memory for his past experiences. There will be no mercy for him. As they talked, the two began to make some changes to the blood sacrifice magic circle arranged in the town. Although the changes were not big, they quietly deprived the authority and effect of the time magic circle. Replacement. Of course, this is the magic circle of the dark god of magic, and he is very proficient in it. But as I said, the times are changing. 30,000 years have passed, and countless magicians and magic scholars have reformed and innovated magic. Today's magic has made great progress compared to 30,000 years ago. Various magic skills and magic circles have been greatly improved. Clinging to the past will eventually be abandoned by the times. For example, the dark god of magic, all his magic is the routine of 30,000 years ago, which is very old and outdated for the current magic world. The reason why he was able to rely on these magics to escape the pursuit of these holy magic masters was only because of the dark god of magic's superb and direct and profound magic comprehension. At the same time, other magicians did not understand the dark god of magic's old magic. If they could understand it, they could easily restrain it. Just like Vino and Lin En, the two of them only observed secretly, and they were able to analyze the magic of the dark god of law. Then they easily stole his authority. And the dark god of law didn't know all this. Let's go, wait for the good show to start. Seeing that Vino had done all this, Lin En said with a smile. This big show can be said to be dominated by him. He was looking forward to seeing the end. Vino didn't know Lin En's thoughts, but in order to make their ambush go smoothly, he secretly sent a message to the holy magic masters, asking them to relax the search during this period. But secretly, they had already prepared everything, just waiting for the dark god of law to jump out himself. 3 days later, the sun was rising, and the morning sun shone on the town. The light mist was floating, and the leaves and grass were hung with last night's dew. In the quiet town, as the sun gradually rose, it gradually revived and began to have vitality. Some people who got up early have begun to rush for life. Such a morning is just an extremely ordinary morning for them. But for many people, it is not ordinary. Without the townspeople noticing, the surroundings of the town suddenly lit up. Then, magic arrays appeared one after another. They shone with a bloody aura, raging over the town, and the black magic arrays crisscrossed, carrying death and killing. Seeing this scene, the residents of the town were all stunned. They didn't know what happened, but they understood, they had encountered a magician. Moreover, this magic didn't look so friendly. A wild dog accidentally touched the black magic array, but it didn't even scream, and turned directly into a pile of dry bones. Seeing this scene, all the residents understood. Dark Mage. The Dark Mage is coming. Everyone, run away. There was a priest from the Church of Light in the town. After seeing this scene, he shouted with anger. This roar woke up the residents. They screamed and wanted to escape, leave the town, and leave the magic circle. But just as they were running away, they were suddenly shocked to find that the bloody magic circle covering the town had dissipated inadvertently. The residents hadn't figured out all the situation yet. They stared at the scene in front of them, stunned for a while. At the same time, in a dense forest outside the town, Hansen suddenly stiffened, and then opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of blood. With an unbelievable look in his eyes, he exclaimed, "How is this possible? Who is it? Who moved my magic circle?" At this moment, his face was as pale as paper, and his breath was extremely weak, but he didn't care at all. In his heart, there was only a slow shock. He couldn't sense his magic circle. There are only two possibilities. One is that the magic circle is invalid. The other is that the authority is deprived. But no matter which one, it is not a good thing for him. The magic circle failed after it was activated, and he suffered backlash, which made him injured, and now he is almost at the end of his strength. In addition, the magic circle leaked its breath just now, and those Saint Domain masters must have sensed it and would definitely come to investigate. He must escape from here as soon as possible. Thinking of this, he showed panic on his face and wanted to run away immediately. However, it was too late. Around this dense forest, more than 10 breaths belonging to Saint Domain masters surrounded him. 00. A huge magic circle was activated, trapping him in it. Outside this magic circle, there was an extremely majestic breath rising into the sky. The magical energy was as deep as the sea, crushing him and almost making him unable to breathe. The breath of the God of Law. And it was a breath that he was very familiar with, which had long been engraved in his bones and could never be forgotten even for eternity. "Vino," he roared, his words were filled with strong unwillingness and resentment. And with unimaginable fear. However, he could only roar this one sentence. The dark God of Law has made a comeback, and no one knows if he has other cards and means. In order to cut the Gordian knot and prevent complications, the magic circle was activated instantly, and the strongest killing move was offered. More than a dozen Holy Domain mages and Holy Domain knights also used their unique skills together to completely submerge the dark God of Law. In the end, it was still Vino who gave a fatal blow and buried his life. The body, soul, even clothes and storage rings, everything related to it were all annihilated. The ashes were scattered in the space. In addition, the magic circle also plowed all the trees and stones within a radius of 100 miles to ensure that there would be no chance for the Dark God to escape. Under such an attack, the Dark God fell completely. And this time, without the system, he had no chance of resurrection. But at the last moment of the Dark God's fall, there was only one thought left in his mind. Who is scheming against me? He never figured this out until he died. A few days later, the frightened residents of the town saw the scene after the war in the dense forest outside the town. When thinking about what happened a few days ago, everyone could vaguely guess what happened. The matter was reported to the priest of the church, who came in person and washed the ground with holy light for a whole day and night before stopping. On the other side, Lin En and Vino also had a conversation between teachers and students. During this period, Lin En simply asked about the things in the academy. After learning that the academy was still the same as usual, but compared with previous years, some good magician seedlings emerged. Such as Rosa, Adeline, and Lilith, who had just emerged in the academy. After learning that they were still in the academy and had been well trained, Lin En nodded to show that he understood. Then, Vino returned to the academy with his men, and Lin En continued on the road, traveling on the continent. Along the way, Lin En did not set a destination of 420, but followed the guidance of his heart and walked through one place after another. He once came to a valley, and I went to a secret realm that no one else had ever touched. This secret realm was a cave of a holy mage, and there were some very precious inheritances for others, but for Lin En, there was nothing worth his attention. So, Lin En took some books that recorded knowledge in the cave, and then left the cave and sealed it again. Then he left. This cave may meet a lucky person in the future to open it. Then another legendary story will be staged on the mainland. He also went to an area that no one had ever set foot in. Here, all kinds of rare spiritual herbs and magic potions are everywhere, and people can pick them. Lin En did not collect them all, but only took away a dozen of the oldest spiritual herbs and magic potions and kept them well. So he left this paradise. It will wait for another lucky person to arrive here. Going all the way, I saw spring and autumn. Lin En personally walked through mountains and rivers. He has seen dangerous places and has also been to caves in the world. But with his strength, he can often easily walk to the core area and see the hidden treasures. But these so-called treasures are not enough to attract Lin En. He often leaves after getting books and some interesting things from them. He saw many interesting things on the way. He also met Joanna in a prosperous city where humans gathered. She became a powerful warrior because she found the method of cultivation from the dragon. There are often many followers around her, and men with strong strength and extraordinary backgrounds follow her and work hard. They just hope to win Joanna's favor. But she doesn't show any color. She often stays away from these men. Her ambitions and ideals have never changed. She has never lost herself in the prosperity from beginning to end. She understands a truth very clearly. If you don't want to become a vassal of others in this world, you can only make yourself powerful. Only your own strength is the eternal foundation. In a dense forest, the tall woman held a long knife and looked around vigilantly. Beside her, a handsome man was chattering away. He was wearing golden armor, and the decorations on his body were all gorgeous and luxurious, looking majestic. He raised the long knife in his hand and said, "Joanna, you know, my family specializes in the medicinal materials business. If you need it, you can tell me. As long as there is it in this forest, I think I can find it for you. Why do you have to go to the dense forest to explore in person? After all, this place is too dangerous, not suitable for women like you." The man named Dyson chattered away. While talking, he also tried his best to show his self-proclaimed masculinity. However, Joanna was indifferent to this. She stared at the surroundings without blinking, and said indifferently, "Dyson, I told you that if I need something, I will find it myself. We are not familiar with each other, so don't bother me." Her voice was very stiff, and anyone could hear the alienation in her words. Dyson did not give up, and said, "Joanna, you know my feelings, I really. Of course I know your feelings, but what can you give me?" Joanna stopped, looked at Dyson, and said expressionlessly, for example. If I accept your kindness, what can you give me? Can you convince your family to give me a name? Your family can't let a woman like me with no background enter your home, so do you want me to become your vassal?" She looked at Dyson and said bluntly, "Dyson, don't be so naive. You are just an immature child, you don't know what I want at all. So, please don't waste your time on me, I don't have any feelings for you. In addition, I only have one idea now, that is to become stronger." After that, Joanna left the place by herself, leaving Dyson alone. He looked at Joanna's back and wanted to say something, but when the words came to his lips, he didn't say anything. As Joanna said, his family would never allow him to marry this woman home. And he also knew that Joanna would never be a mistress. More importantly, Joanna didn't like him either. But he still didn't want to give up. This woman was so heroic. When he first saw Joanna in the city, he fell deeply in love with her temperament. Compared with other women, she was so fascinating that Dyson couldn't help himself. Thinking of this, he reaffirmed his thoughts. Just as he was about to call Joanna, at this moment, a very terrifying breath suddenly came from not far away. "This is a holy level monster." Dyson was frightened and his face turned pale, and the whole person froze in place. And Joanna's body tensed up instantly. Then, she seemed to sense something and subconsciously looked up. In the direction of his gaze, a figure was suspended in the air, and in front of him, a huge monster. Then, the monster just roared, and was knocked down to dust by the figure with a wave of his hand. With a violent explosion, the monster disappeared and became a pile of broken bodies. 5.7 Watching this figure kill the sanctuary-level monster with a wave of his hand, Dyson was completely stunned. And Joanna was even more stunned. Because she recognized this person. "It's him. In the town, she had invited this person to join their team, but unfortunately, she was rejected. At that time, Joanna had not yet practiced and did not know how strong Lin En was. But now seeing Lin En kill the sanctuary-level monster with a wave of his hand, she immediately understood how terrifying Lin En's strength was. Just when Joanna was amazed at such strength. At this time, Lin En also saw Joanna on the ground. Meet an old friend in a foreign land. And he is also a very interesting person, of course Lin En will not leave. He landed, walked in front of Joanna, and said with a smile, "It seems that you and I have some fate, and we can meet here." "You, who are you?" Dyson wanted to step forward and question, but facing Lin En, feeling the boundless aura and aloof temperament, his originally aggressive tone turned into a timid tone. He even stuttered when he spoke. A feeling of self-ashamed arose in his heart for no reason. Lin En glanced at Dyson, then set his eyes on Joanna, and said with a smile, "It seems that you have a good relationship with people." "No, it's not like that. He and I are not familiar with each other. I came here to find a herb that can improve my strength. He saw me in the city, so he pestered me." After hearing Lin En's words, Joanna suddenly cared about Lin En's opinion of her for some reason, and hurried to explain. After saying that, she suddenly felt that what she said was wrong, and stood there for a while, a little bit at a loss. Lin En looked at the other party with a smile. Watching Joanna, such a heroic woman, a blush gradually appeared on her eyelids. The other party's helpless look made him feel very interesting. After staring for a while, just when Joanna was about to be unbearable, Lin En finally spoke and broke the embarrassment, "You don't have to explain to me." Ha. .09. Feeling the stiff atmosphere broken, Joanna breathed a sigh of relief. After hearing Lin En's words again, for some reason, she felt a little lost in her heart. She looked at Lin En in front of her. After all these days, he still hadn't changed at all. Whether in appearance or temperament, he was still so lonely and noble, like the bright moon in the sky. When people looked at him, they felt happy and their souls seemed to be baptized. What kind of person was it that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him? At this moment, this thought suddenly came to her mind. She looked down at herself again. Because of her practice, her muscles were tight. Although she was not as disgusting as the big guys who gained muscle, she was not like the popular women in this world. Her hands had calluses because she had been holding weapons for many years. A feeling of self-ashamed came to her mind. It's not that Joanna fell in love with Lin En. It's because Lin En was too outstanding after all. Even Joanna admired him and wanted to form a partner with him. Although she had seen many great people in her past and present lives. But in her 2 lives, she had never seen a man as outstanding as Lin En. Good birds choose trees to inhabit. Men like beautiful women. Women naturally admire excellent men. Joanna just felt that she might not be destined to meet such a man in the future, so it was a pity to rush there. After coming to this world, Joanna was cautious because of her experience, but in fact, she rarely looked up to men in this world. The god of law walking in the world, Vino, was one of them. But Vino was just an old man after all. She only had respect for this god of law walking in the world. In this case, Lin En was the only one she liked and was of the right age. It was just a pity. Thinking of this, she was a little depressed. But she quickly cheered up and said in a humble manner, "I didn't know that you were a holy mage at the time, so I was rash and abrupt. Please don't blame me." She was talking about inviting Lin En to join the mercenary team. "Of course I won't blame you." Lin En smiled and said, "After all, that was an interesting past, wasn't it?" Joanna smiled, then looked around, and for some reason, a bold idea suddenly emerged in her mind. Then she subconsciously said, "Can I invite you to dinner?" After saying this, she regretted it. What kind of status is the other party, and what kind of status is she? Now if she invites rashly, I'm afraid Lin En will not agree. Maybe she will be a little unhappy. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt a little nervous. But besides being nervous, she was also a little looking forward to it. However, what Joanna didn't expect was that after hearing her proposal, Lin En just thought about it and said, "Okay." Really, hearing Lin En's answer, Joanna was overjoyed, with a touch of surprise on her face. "Of course, how can I refuse a beautiful lady's request?" Lin En also said with a smile. There was a hint of teasing in her words. Joanna also understood that the beautiful lady in Lin En's words had some ambiguous atmosphere. For a moment, she blushed. But after all, there was a huge difference in status, so she didn't dare to think too much. After the two agreed, Lin En led them and Joanna pointed the way to the nearest town. Intend to have a drink together. Joanna was immersed in great joy. Her head was dizzy. Until she arrived at the town, she suddenly woke up. She seemed to have forgotten something. In the dense forest, Dyson stared blankly at the direction where Lin En and the others left, stunned for a long time. Only then did he come back to his senses. He jumped up and down, and shouted with tears in his eyes, "Hey, you forgot me." Unfortunately, no one responded. However, a wolf howl suddenly sounded, answering his words. This frightened Dyson so much that his body stiffened. He looked at the deserted forest around him with a nervous expression. After a moment, he cried with a crying voice, "Don't do this." In the tavern, Lin En and Joanna sat at a table. Their arrival attracted the attention of many people. Joanna was heroic. Lin En had an extraordinary temperament. Many people secretly paid attention to him. Even some crooked thoughts came into their minds. But because of the powerful aura that Lin En exuded, these people gave up the idea. They talked about the past in the tavern. Of course, it was mainly Lin En who was talking, and Joanna was listening quietly. During this period, Lin En mentioned his experiences when he traveled on the continent in 2008. The magnificent and majestic continent gave Joanna endless yearning. She held her face and watched Lin En calmly tell about the opportunities and crises he encountered. For ordinary people, even for her, this is a dead end. But for Lin En, it is just a trivial story. At the same time, she also learned about Lin En's identity while listening. As she listened, she was stunned. Some sadness suddenly emerged in her heart. She was sad that she suddenly came to this world. She was also sad that she met such an excellent person, but she could never stand shoulder to shoulder with him. For her, the Lin in front of her was, although Lin En was so close to her, they were separated by a world. He was like the moonlight in the water tank in front of her. She could see it but could not touch it. Apart from the moonlight, all she had was the lake water. At the end of the dinner, Joanna sighed silently. She knew that after this meal, they would go their separate ways and would have nothing to do with each other. However, just as she sighed, she suddenly felt a hand touching her head. And Lin En's words also rang in her ears. "Don't underestimate yourself. I see many excellent qualities in you. I hope you work hard and I can hear your legend from the bard in the future." Quote. Lin En touched Joanna's head and praised her generously. Joanna was stunned for a moment when she heard Lin En's praise. She didn't expect Lin En to do such an intimate thing. She didn't expect Lin En to say such encouraging words to her. For a moment, Joanna felt her mind was blank and she didn't know what to say. But at the same time, she felt a warm breath coming. Feeling the smell of Lin En, she felt extremely relieved. After coming to this world, Joanna has been struggling for survival and has never relaxed for a moment. Even when she was sleeping, she would wake up instantly if there was any movement in the middle of the night. She has never experienced any peace. However, beside Lin En, she felt infinite warmth. This warmth and peace are what she has never experienced in her past and present lives. At this moment, she has only one idea. That is to let this scene last forever. She looked up and looked at Lin En, with red eyes, tried to hold back the tears, and said, "Thank you." The next morning, the sky was bright. Yesterday seemed like a dream, but this dream was too real. When Joanna woke up, she did not feel Lin En's movements, knowing that the other party had left. Although she was mentally prepared for this, she was still inevitably disappointed. However, when she walked to the table, she saw a note on it. "Don't forget your ideals, it is undoubtedly the most beautiful to work hard and get closer to your goals. Charming lady, please keep working hard. I hope to see you in the capital of the Holy Empire in the future." Seeing the words on the note, she was upright and elegant. Seeing the words is like seeing the face. She seemed to see the gentleman in a black robe. For a moment, she was stunned. Her palm tightly grasped the note and touched it in her palm. This day, this moment, from this moment on, Joanna's ambition has not changed. Her goal is still to stand at the top. It's just that before, she did it for herself. But now, it's to be qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with Lin En. Lin En continued on his way. The reason why he gave Joanna a certain warmth and even encouraged her. It's just because he saw in her what Lin En admires Joanna's character very much. Unlike other girls, her past experiences have made Joanna have a toughness and perseverance that is different from ordinary people. This self-reliant character that is not inferior to others also makes Lin En look at her differently. Acting like this is just a seed planted casually. If Joanna can really come to him in the future, maybe Lin En will give her an answer. After all, in Lin En's past, he has seen too many women. Some old-fashioned plots make Lin En annoyed with these. In addition, since he became a holy magician, because of the improvement of his life level, people below the holy domain are naturally different in his eyes. For example, in the eyes of people in the sacred realm, ordinary magicians and ordinary people have impurities in their bodies and imperfect souls. How can such people be loved by the sanctuary? Only by stepping into this level can the transformation of life be completed. Only in this way can one be qualified to stand by Lin En's side. And Joanna, although she is already good. But now it is obviously not enough. This time, Lin En went south with a purpose. During the long journey, he came to the seaside, witnessed the magnificence of the sea, and saw the power of many sea monsters. He picked up some interesting treasures in the sea. It is not very precious, but for Lin En, it is worth collecting and giving to friends. It is worth mentioning that he accidentally encountered a mermaid at sea. After seeing him, the mermaid was very enthusiastic and took him to the gathering place of the tribe and held a grand welcome ceremony. In theory, mermaids hate humans very much. Because the tears of mermaids can form precious pearls and gems, and mermaids are the darlings of the sea who grow up in the sea, and almost all of them are women of excellent appearance. They are sought after and loved by many nobles on the mainland. Many islands and adventurers are sailing on the sea, hoping to catch mermaids and make a fortune. But for Lin En, they have no defense against silkworms. This is not only because of the strength of Lin En's holy magician, but also because of Lin En's appearance. Who cannot be fond of such a perfect person? Lin En felt the enthusiasm of the mermaids. He stayed here for 3 nights, and then left under the reluctant eyes of the mermaids. At the time of separation, each mermaid gave Lin En 10 pearls. These are tears of separation and reluctance. Then, Lin En set out on the journey again. He had been to the tribe of centaurs, hunted with them, and exchanged magic potions for their specialties. He also set foot in the underground world and met a group of migrating goblins. Because of his cultivation and appearance, the goblins enthusiastically invited him to go with them. An ancient goblin elder personally presented Lin En with a gold ingot. You know, goblins love ore and gold very much, but now giving it to Lin En is enough to show the enthusiasm of the goblins. But Lin En smiled and refused. After a moment of hesitation, the goblin elder gave Lin En the treasure he had made the most proud of. A hairpin. It was pitch black and inlaid with black gems, which looked low-key and luxurious. Lin En liked it very much, so he gave the goblin a bottle of magic potion at the sanctuary level in return. Putting the hairpin on his head, Lin En continued on his way. He met the tree people, Wang Nuo, and exchanged the tree sap wine brewed by the other party with magic materials. In the dwarf tribe, he made the precious ore he obtained into a suitable magic weapon. Along the way, Lin En met many tribes and was warmly received. After all, no one will refuse beautiful things. No one would embarrass a holy mage. Finally, he came to the forest of elves, where he met a group of beautiful elves. The noble and elegant elf queen received Lin En and gave him a grand ceremony. Lin En lived here for a while, and the princess of the elves hoped to follow Lin En. After learning Lin En's identity, the elf queen once again asked the little princess's wishes, and then she allowed this behavior. And Lin En, of course, would not refuse. So, there was a little tale behind him. A cute girl from the elves. Your Highness, what is this? This is meteorite gold. Meteorite gold, is it formed by falling stars? Yes. Wow, no wonder it looks so good. Not as good looking as you. Really, hee hee. Quote. Such a conversation was heard on the top of a deserted mountain. A male voice and a female voice. The male voice was gentle and magnetic, and his words were full of pampering. The female voice was crisp, like jade beads falling on a plate, echoing through the valley. These two people were naturally Lin En, and the little tail following behind Lin En. The little princess from the elves, Tiffany. Lin En was wearing a black robe, with a black, simple and elegant hairpin on her head. She elegantly placed the meteorite gold in front of her in the storage ring. And Tiffany came over, squatted in front of her, and asked curiously. She had lived in the forest of elves since she was a child, and she had never been out, so she had endless curiosity about the outside world. She wore a black robe and a hood on her head, covering the ears of the elves, but still couldn't cover her breathtaking appearance. Since Tiffany followed Lin En, Lin En's journey to the continent became much more interesting. Of course, this also brought him a lot of unnecessary trouble. Many people were interested in Tiffany, but they all failed in Lin En's hands. Later, Lin En, who was fed up with it, stopped going to the human tribes and went to the mountains and rivers, where there were few people. Along the way, he passed through the gathering places of more than 10 races, and also let the elf Tiffany see many new things. And Lin En also saw all kinds of rare treasures and countless strange scenes of heaven and earth. Similarly, he saw the good and evil of various creatures. In such a wonderful journey, Lin En experienced the origin of the world and also experienced the joy from the bottom of his heart. These times and these experiences made Lin En very happy. In his previous 18 years of life, he had always been as calm as water. But because of this trip, Lin En's mood became cheerful. Of course, it was mainly due to the elf Tiffany. In addition, Lin En also gained something else. His magic skills. During this journey, because of his understanding of the laws of nature, his understanding and application of the laws became more profound. Not long ago, he successfully entered the realm of Forbidden Spell Mage. He took the second step in his field of Holy Mage. After entering the Holy Domain, what is needed is not only the accumulation of magic power. More importantly, it is the understanding of the laws. This is also the level that troubles many strong men in the Holy Domain. Otherwise, those strong men who have entered the ranks of Holy Mage have lived for thousands of years, and even if they have accumulated, they have already raised their magic power to the realm of Celestial Mage. The reason why some are still stuck in the realm Mage is because they do not understand the laws thoroughly. And Lin En only stepped from the realm Mage to the Forbidden Spell Mage in such a short time. There is no doubt that his gains are very self-evident. Standing on the top of the mountain, feeling the cool mountain breeze blowing. These mountain winds are very violent, but when they reach Lin En, they will be very happy. When Lin En was by his side, he would invisibly slow down his speed. It was like a breeze blowing on his face, and like a gentle breeze coming. It made people feel comfortable and relaxed. Counting the time, it has been 3 years since he graduated from Saint Laurent Magic Academy. In these 3 years, Lin En walked through mountains and rivers, and walked to many places on the continent. He benefited a lot from what he saw and heard. Of course, he also felt a little tired. It's time to go back. Thinking of this, Lin En looked at the elf standing beside him and said with a smile, "Tiffany, do you want to go to Saint Laurent?" Saint Laurent? Is it Saint Laurent Magic Academy? Tiffany's eyes lit up and she asked softly. Of course. Lin En said. Great. The elf cheered. She has longed for human society. But she heard her mother and tribesmen say in the forest since she was a child that humans are very bad, and they would think of catching them ajeb when they see them, so Tiffany was scared and never dared to step out of the elf forest. Now she is with His Highness Lin En, and she is finally not afraid. But, Your Highness, do you want to go with me? It won't work if you leave me there alone. The elf suddenly thought of something and said hurriedly. Of course not, how can I bear to leave you alone there? Of course you go wherever I go. Lin En smiled and stroked the elf Tiffany's wrist. The latter narrowed his eyes and showed a comfortable expression. Okay, let's go. It's been so long, it's time to go back. Lin En took the elf and left the mountain. He carved a magic circle in a flat area and inlaid it with expensive energy gems. This place is thousands of miles away from the Saint Laurent School of Magic. Such a long-distance magic teleportation array requires a huge and immeasurable amount of energy. But this is obviously not a problem for Lin En. As the magic circle took shape, Lin En and Tiffany stepped into it. Then, Lin En activated the magic circle. As a burst of magic light rose, Lin En and Tiffany disappeared instantly. And the magic circle, after playing its role, completely failed. Saint Laurent School of Magic. When he opened his eyes, Lin En found himself in a square with a huge statue in front of him. It was his teacher, the god of magic, Venor. Feeling the peaceful atmosphere in the school, Lin En couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He is back. At this time, Tiffany also opened her eyes and saw the scene of Saint Laurent School of Magic. Feeling the rich magic elements in the air and the fragrance of flowers and plants around, she liked this place at the first time. Your Highness, is this Saint Laurent School of Magic? The elf Tiffany said excitedly. It is worthy of being the oldest and most powerful magic school of mankind, it is amazing. She looked around and looked quite excited. But soon, her excitement was gone. Because Lin En came with a magic teleportation array, many instructors in the academy and nearby students felt it. When they came here, they found Lin En and the elves following him. Those instructors who stepped into the sacred realm would naturally not make a fuss. But those students were all stunned when they saw the appearance and breathtaking beauty of Tiffany the elf. It was the first time that Tiffany saw so many people. Feeling the attention of the people around her, she held the corner of Lin En's clothes with some fear, and hid behind Lin En. Seeing this, Lin En grabbed Tiffany's wrist and smiled at a Saint Domain instructor who came over. Professor Lachi is my teacher in the office. Yes, are you going to find him? The Saint Domain instructor with white hair and beard said with a smile. Of course, Lin En thanked him, and then he and Tiffany disappeared here in an instant. Chapter 71. Dean's Office. The elf Tiffany sat on the couch a little awkwardly, looking very restrained. After all, facing the god of law walking in the world, the legendary wizard Vino on the continent, no matter who it is, will be nervous. Even her mother, the queen of the elves, has to show restraint appropriately. As if sensing the elf's nervousness, Vino said with a smile, "Such a lovely elf, why are you nervous in front of me?" Lord Vino, because you. Hearing Vino's question, the elf Tiffany wanted to explain, but didn't know what to say for a while. At this time, Lin En grabbed Tiffany's hand and comforted her. Then he glared at Vino and said, "How old are you, and you still want to scare a little girl?" Da. Vino smiled heartily and moved his eyes away from Tiffany. Without the attention of the god of law, Tiffany finally breathed a sigh of relief. Sitting quietly beside Lin En, her little hand tightly holding the corner of the latter's clothes. Vino looked at Lin En, feeling the aura emanating from him, and said with satisfaction, "It seems that you have gained a lot during your travels." Obviously, he has sensed that Lin En has entered the ranks of forbidden spell masters. Of course, this comes from your protection. Lin En also said with a smile. Now that you are back, you should be more at ease. Then, continue to teach these children in the academy. Vino said. They are eager for knowledge, just like trees are eager for rain. I am happy to do so. Lin En did not refuse, but accepted it calmly. In addition, thank you for your kindness, I hope I can live up to your expectations. He smiled and said, 3 years have passed, and I miss them a little. After all, they are so smart and studious that they left a deep impression on me. Lin En, who said this, completely forgot what he said when he left the Magic Academy 3 years ago. Because of your stupidity, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. Take the elf Tiffany to the castle where he lives, let the maid take good care of her, and then Lin En began to understand what happened in the academy in the past 3 years. In the courtyard, Lin En was flipping through magic books. The old butler wearing glasses, neat and smooth clothes, and meticulously combed hair bowed slightly, stood beside him, and told what he heard in the Magic Academy. Lin En has been out for 3 years. Generally speaking, nothing big has happened in the academy, but there are many things that have caused heated discussions. The most noteworthy ones are several influential figures in the academy. First of all, the ice goddess Adeline in the academy has graduated from the academy 2 years ago. She did not leave the academy, but was invited by a mentor to enter the academy's advanced class, and has been learning magic knowledge until now. However, it is said that she has entered the ranks of 6-star wizards some time ago. At such an age, with such a cultivation, it can be said that she is definitely better than her peers. Many mentors have high hopes for her and think that the possibility of achieving the Holy Land is very high. In addition, Adeline has also become an apprentice teacher in the academy, and is currently following a female instructor who specializes in magic potions. The second is a female magician named Rosa. Her luck is really good. Since she first emerged, her luck has always been very good. Not only can she find treasures smoothly every time she goes out, but she has also encountered some newly opened secret realms many times, from which she has obtained a lot of treasures. She seems to have the ability of foresight, and she can always rush to the secret realm and the treasure in advance, waiting for the arrival of the treasure. When Rosa was mentioned, even the knowledgeable old housekeeper couldn't help but give a heartfelt admiration. Her good luck was incredible. Lin En did not comment, but nodded slightly, indicating that the old housekeeper should continue. In addition to the above two people, there is also Lilith, who was originally taught by Lin En. She graduated last year and successfully obtained the diploma of Saint Laurent Magic Academy with the results of a 3-star magician. Logically speaking, such results are not very conspicuous and should not be heard by the old housekeeper. But her popularity is too high. She is not inferior to the iceberg goddess in the academy. Even because the iceberg goddess Adeline has a cold personality, while Lilith has a more cheerful personality, she is even more popular. The reason for this is that during the 5 years since she enrolled in the academy, Lilith seemed to have gradually grown up, her face became more and more beautiful, and she became more and more charming. She once fascinated all the boys in the academy. Especially in the last year of her graduation, Lilith received many love letters almost every day. She receives a lot of gifts on her desk every day. When she graduated, most of the boys were sad and wondered what kind of person could pick this blooming flower in the future. It was precisely because of the high popularity that the old butler who had been in the castle could hear about it. I heard that Miss Lilith took her family to the capital after graduation. I don't know whether the specific information is accurate, but I just heard others say so. The old butler concluded. Lin En nodded. Then he closed his eyes slightly and felt it carefully. As the master of the system, as long as he has marked it, he can leave a mark on the other party. From then on, no matter where the other party is, Lin En can sense the other party's location. Just like at this moment, Lin En vaguely sensed the distance of Lilith, and judging from the direction, it should be the capital. 0. Lilith has long been noticed by Lin En, and she can't run away. Therefore, Lin En was relieved and let the old butler continue. Then, the old butler briefly narrated some things that happened in the academy. It is worth mentioning that Blair, his former tool, gave up returning home to inherit the title after graduation, and instead became an apprentice teacher in the academy. However, because he had previously worked for Lin En was writing a magic paper, so he has been studying related topics over the years and has achieved some results. If this continues, it is estimated that in 10 years, the college will have another doctoral student in magic research. Lin En listened briefly. He found that there was indeed no big change in the college during the 3 years he was away. Many things are still the same as before. Of course, this is only on the surface. In places that people cannot see, there are some people whose fate has changed because of Lin En's choice. The most typical one is Blair. The reason why Lin En asked Blair to be his assistant at the beginning. One is because of Blair's diligence and concentration. The second is that he felt the attention of God on Blair. There is a line in the dark that involves Blair and Lilith. If Lin En hadn't intervened and pulled Blair out at that time, I'm afraid that Blair at this time still can't get rid of Lilith and fall into endless entanglement with her. The current situation is undoubtedly good. When Lin En left Saint Laurent Magic Academy, the students he taught were about to enter the 3rd grade. Now 3 years have passed. Most of his students have successfully graduated from the academy and left. A new generation replaces the old. Walking on the path, Lin En looked at the students passing by, most of whom were unfamiliar faces. They were full of vigor, with a yearning for the future and a pursuit of their ideal wife. This vigor made Lin En happy. He thought of the students he had taught. Perhaps some of them have begun to emerge on the continent and become the mainstream of magicians on the continent. Others have returned to peace, returned to their hometowns, and developed step by step. Some are unknown, and some are successful. Everyone's choices are different, and their future encounters are even more different. 760. Some choose to struggle in the remote corners of the empire, some choose to mingle in towns and villages, some choose to wander in famous mountains and rivers, and some shuttle among the upper class of celebrities. But no matter what they are doing, no matter who they are, perhaps when they look back on the past occasionally, they will think of the days when they studied at Saint Laurent Magic Academy, and they should remember the teacher who despised them at the time. Or perhaps, they have long forgotten this past. But obviously, not all people have forgotten. There are also people who remember this mentor who only taught in the academy for 2 years. Adeline, the former iceberg goddess in the academy and now the trainee teacher, is one of them. Walking on the road to the academy, when she saw the man in front of her with a noble temperament and outstanding, she recognized him at the first time. Although 3 years have passed. But Lin En is not someone who will be forgotten casually by others. His outstanding temperament and outstanding background, and even his talent that is hard to compare with him, still make Adeline unable to forget. Always remember it in my heart. 3 years have passed, and His Highness Lin En's appearance and temperament are still as good as before, and even more amazing than before. Adeline had forgotten how she walked to Lin En, and how she spoke. Only when she greeted him first did she suddenly realize it. Long time no see, Your Highness Lin En. Unconsciously, there was a hint of respect in her words. This was respect for Lin En's strength, and even more awe for Lin En's temperament. Long time no see, I remember you, your name is Adeline, right? Lin En nodded, looking at the tall and cold woman in front of her, and said softly. Adeline was a little surprised that Lin En could remember her name. At the same time, she was a little happy. After all, Lin En taught class 3 of grade 1 at the beginning, and was not her teacher. Adeline quickly came back to her senses and said politely, I'm glad you still remember my name. Your Highness Lin En, is there anything that brings you back to the academy this time? Of course. Lin En looked at the huge clock tower of the Saint Laurent School of Magic in the distance and said, I have been traveling for 3 years and feel bored, so I returned to the academy and plan to pick up the teaching career again. So that's how it is. Hearing Lin En's words, Adeline didn't know why she suddenly felt happy. Is it because she can see Your Highness Lin En in the academy again? She thought so in her heart, but smiled and said, It is a blessing for the students that you can come back to teach. I think they will all be happy because of your arrival. I hope so. The two chatted for a while. Adeline was going to deliver some information, and Lin En was going to wander around the academy. So they said goodbye. When Lin En was strolling in the academy, many people were attracted by his unforgettable temperament and appearance. And some senior students quickly remembered his identity after seeing Lin En. Soon, the news that His Highness Lin En returned to the academy and served as a tutor again spread throughout the academy. For a time, countless students were excited. In the early morning, the huge magic bell rang throughout the Saint Laurent Magic Academy. This meant that the academy was about to start classes. Many students shuttled through the campus. It was just dawn at this time. The whole mountain was still shrouded in a thin layer of fog, with heavy humidity. Many students walked on the road and were soon wet by the fog. They walked in groups of 3 or 2, holding books, towards their classes. At the same time, Lin En walked on the path of the academy, slowly heading towards the class he was about to attend. He was wearing a loose robe, still the same style as before. For several years, he had never changed it. Most of these robes were sewn by 4 maids for him. They were not only decent and thoughtful, but also engraved with complicated magic patterns, enough to withstand the damage of 5-star grade magicians. He walked on the road with a textbook in his hand. He had a straight figure and a beautiful appearance, especially under the cover of mist, there was a hazy beauty. Some students noticed Lin En and couldn't help but exclaimed. One student even took out a mirror stone from his storage ring, a kind of magic stone. Once it is triggered by magic, the current picture can be reproduced. It has the ability to take pictures and save. The price is very expensive. Some magic families and powerful magicians use it to preserve some precious moments that need to be remembered. And at this moment, this young female magician actually took it and reflected the scene in front of her. When she finished taking the picture, she looked at Lin En's appearance in the mirror stone and couldn't help but exclaimed. When did such a classmate appear in the academy? She was a little amazed. At the same time, she also wanted to go up and talk to Lin En. But when she thought of this and looked up, she found that Lin En had already disappeared. This made her very depressed. However, she quickly cheered up. After all, this amazing student was also in the school. Even if there was no chance this time, she would definitely meet him again in the future. Moreover, with such a look, the other party must not be unknown. So, she took the shadow stone and asked around. As expected, everyone who saw the picture in the shadow stone exclaimed in amazement. Many young students from magic families took out their own shadow stones and imprinted them. In a short period of time, this picture of Lin En had spread to the point where everyone in the whole college knew it. Grade 1, Class 1. In the class, almost all the students gathered together, looking at the shadow stone in a classmate's hand, and exclaimed. The sound of sucking in cold air continued to sound from the crowd. When Lin En first went to the tutor's office to get the new student list, and then rushed to the classroom, this was the scene he saw. Hiss. When Lin En walked in, some students who happened to look up took a breath of cold air. Because of the sound of the gasps, other students also subconsciously looked up, so that the sound of gasps was heard one after another. They looked at the real person in front of them, and then looked at the picture on the shadow stone, and everyone's face showed shock. Some female students even subconsciously took out the shadow stone, wanting to take a picture of Lin En's current posture, for fear that what they saw was just an illusion. However, just when they raised the shadow stone and activated it with magic, Lin En frowned. With a slight flick of his finger, the entire classroom was transformed into his domain. In this area, everyone's magic could not be mobilized. And the shadow stone, naturally, could not be used. Put it down, Lin En said calmly. The freshmen put down the shadow stone obediently. But in their hearts, they were amazed. God, why is the sound so nice? Lin En turned around and wrote his name on the blackboard. My name is Lin En, you can call me Mentor Lin En. A cool and gentle voice sounded in the classroom. The sound of jade colliding made a clear sound, resounding throughout the classroom. From today on, I will be your instructor of magic knowledge courses. A very simple introduction, but in the ears of the students, it was like a thunderclap in the ground. Lin En, the little prince of the Holy Empire, has an extremely outstanding magic talent. A few years ago, he became a disciple of the dean of the Saint Laurent Magic Academy, the god of magic, Vino. And soon he stepped into the ranks of holy magic instructors. Later, he began to teach the students of the Academy magic knowledge courses. But unfortunately, instructor Lin En left the academy after teaching for 2 years and traveled around the continent, and there has been no news. They once regretted that they came to the academy but could not see such a legendary figure. But who knew that His Highness Lin En would become their instructor? Everyone fell into a deep excitement, as if a pie fell from the sky and hit them. This made everyone feel unreal. Is it a dream? They thought so. And just as they were wandering in their minds, Lin En tapped the podium with his fingers, attracting everyone's attention. My grades in this course are related to the year-end review, among which the completion of homework and class attendance are the top priorities. Class attendance, including leave, will be the responsibility of the teaching assistant, and I will assign homework on the spot and collect it before the next class starts. Of course, I am not a person who likes to restrict students. If you feel that you don't need to study anymore, you can take the initiative to find me and let me give you a separate assessment. As long as you complete my assessment, you don't have to take my class this semester, and the bet is still not the best evaluation. Lin En said lightly. However, after hearing his words, all the students rolled their eyes. We are all magic freshmen, and you are a holy mage. Who can say that they have accumulated a lot of magic knowledge in front of a holy mage? This is not a joke. Besides, even if they really have mastered all the magic knowledge, they still have to come to class for the face of teacher Lin En. Does anyone have any questions now? Lin En looked around the room and said loudly. No more, the students said in unison. In fact, they had many questions to ask Lin En, such as whether Lin En had a partner, but they didn't have the courage. Then let's start the class. Before class, we'll call the roll first. Lin En's voice spread throughout the classroom. Every time he called a name, a student responded loudly. After a while, the roll call ended, and the magnetic voice was like a stream, flowing slowly. In the words, with a special rhythm, all the students gradually calmed down, and then immersed themselves in the ocean of knowledge without knowing it. In the Magic Knowledge course, Lin En's insights are very unique. In addition, after he became a sanctuary mage, his mental power was extremely strong, and he was able to cover the mental power of all students, forming a stable mental field to surround them. In this way, all students are covered in their own mental field. As long as they concentrate, they can understand the essence of the magic knowledge they tell them. This is a small method used by the holy mage to teach, but it is very smooth for the absorption of knowledge. Many sanctuary teachers do this in class. Unconsciously, time passed slowly. Soon, the bell for the end of get out of class rang. And until this time, everyone suddenly woke up, and then they heard Chong Li's last words, "No homework today, get out of class dismissed." After that, Lin En had disappeared in front of them. That day, the news that Lin En became the magic knowledge instructor of the first grade class 1 had spread throughout the college. For a time, the whole school was in a sensation. When Lin En the next time he went to class, he saw that the originally huge classroom, which originally had only 50 people, was now full. At a glance, there were at least hundreds of people. All those who came to join in the fun were freshmen of the past 2 years. Lin En frowned, but said nothing. After finishing the day's class, he called on the instructors in the academy to hold a meeting. After a brief discussion for a few minutes, he returned to his castle. The next day, many sanctuary instructors of Saint Laurent Magic Academy announced something. In view of the fact that the new students in the academy in the past 2 years are more impetuous, the academy decided that starting from today, every student will have to go to the training tower to challenge after completing the day's homework. First-year freshmen must at least pass the 5th floor. And 5th-year students must at least pass the 30th floor. If they can't pass, they won't be given a chance. When the news spread, all the students in the academy wailed. The training tower is a pagoda in Saint Laurent Magic Academy. Once when magicians enter the tower, some monsters will be refreshed in the tower, which can allow magicians to practice. Although you will not die if you are injured in the practice tower, it will hurt. Because of this, when the academy did not have the requirement of mandatory practice in the past, the practice tower was often ignored. Only when it comes to the end of the year assessment and practice, students will practice before the battle. And now, the academy has announced that students must start to break through the levels, and they must break through the 30th floor before graduation. Oh my God, all students have a premonition that the next life will definitely be dark. Why did the academy suddenly let us break through the practice tower? In addition to wailing, they couldn't help but be curious. And they probably won't know in this life what all this is because of. Without the impetuous students pouring in all day, Lin En was also in a better mood. But this kind of happiness did not last long. After completing the teaching task for the day, Lin En was about to walk back to his castle to play with the elf Tiffany. However, just after walking a distance, he heard a noisy voice not far away. "Andrew, I hope you don't pester me anymore. Now we have no relationship. If you pester me again, it will not be good for you or me. For the reputation of both of us, I hope we should keep our distance." The young woman said loudly with impatience in her words. The woman looked less than 20 years old, with a graceful figure, snow-white skin, beautiful appearance, and a pair of watery big eyes that were very moving and implied seduction. She wore a bright yellow skirt, which matched her skin and looked particularly suitable. Although the tone of her speech was impatient, her voice was crisp, like the sound of an oriole, which made people feel a little playful and lively. Behind her, a young man with long golden hair ran over. His clothes looked very gorgeous, and he was obviously dressed like a nobleman. But in his gestures, he had a sense of impetuousness. At this moment, the man, Andrew, said, "Susan, you know my feelings. I really know I was wrong. Can you really let go of our previous feelings completely? And I also know that your family is very happy to see us together. If we get married smoothly, isn't this what both parents are happy to see? More importantly, I am sincere to you." Andrew pestered her. The girl in the bright yellow skirt, who was annoyed, became even more angry and blurted out, "Andrew, I'm telling you seriously now, please don't bother me anymore. I already have a new partner, I don't want him to see me and misunderstand me." "New partner," When he heard this, Andrew was stunned at first, then he came to his senses and said with a smile, "Impossible. You haven't had any contact with any man during this period. You said you have a partner. If you have the ability, call him out and let me see. As long as he dares to stand up, I will leave immediately and never bother you again." Andrew's words were firm, because he was sure that Susan didn't have a new partner. Sure enough, hearing this, Susan also looked embarrassed and stood there for a while, not knowing what to do. And at this moment, she suddenly saw Lin walking on the path not far away, and said immediately, "He is my partner, you see it now, don't bother me anymore." As she spoke, Susan ran straight over and came to Lin's side. She stretched out her hand and wanted to hug Lin's arm, and whispered, "Please help me, someone is pestering me, I really have no way." She believed that with her beauty, no one would refuse her. You abandoned me for him. What can compare to me?" At this time, Andrew also ran over. He was going to question angrily when he saw Susan hugging another man. But after seeing Lin's appearance, he stopped talking halfway. Half of the sentence was stuck in his throat, and it took a long time before he said it. "Except for his appearance, what can compare to me?" Susan, who was wearing a bright yellow dress, also said angrily, "What do you care? As long as I like it, anything is fine. Anyway, liking anyone is better than liking you." She was also annoyed and had no choice. Seeing someone around, she immediately rushed over. But after she finished speaking, she subconsciously looked at Lin beside her. When she saw this, she was stunned. After a moment, she came back to her senses, and a look of surprise appeared in her eyes. She didn't expect that the passerby she asked for help in a hurry would have such a stunning appearance. But Susan was born in a family after all, so she quickly restrained her expression. At this time, Andrew glared at Susan. Of course he knew that Susan was just a passerby. After all, the two of them had been childhood sweethearts since childhood, and he knew what kind of person Susan was. But seeing Lin's handsome appearance, he couldn't help but feel some sourness and jealousy in his heart. Especially at this moment, Susan was still hugging Lin's body, which made Andrew even more jealous. Even though he knew that this was not Lin's problem, he still couldn't help thinking of cutting off Lin's head. Susan can only be mine. No one can get close to him. Perhaps even Andrew didn't know that he had such a strong desire to possess Susan. The dispute between them quickly attracted the attention of many people. For a while, many students cast their eyes over. After all, this looked like a love triangle, which was the most popular gossip for young magicians at their age. Soon, many onlookers gathered. Seeing this scene, Lin frowned even more. He looked at Andrew, who was burning with jealousy, and then looked at Susan, who had a flickering look in her eyes. Lin suddenly felt a disgusting breath in the air. He pulled his hand out directly. Then he said expressionlessly, "Miss, if you have any conflicts or emotional problems with your boyfriend, please solve them by yourself and don't involve others." As soon as this sentence came out, Susan was stunned. She hurriedly pulled Lin's clothes in private, then forced a smile, blinked and said, "Dear, don't be angry, he and I really have nothing to do with each other. Money. The only person I like now is you. Don't worry, I will definitely send this hateful guy away." After saying that, she wanted to step forward and hug Lin's arm. But who knew that just when she wanted to step forward, Lin took a step back. "Let Susan's attack be empty." Then, Lin said calmly, "Miss, I think you have recognized the wrong person. I don't know if you have another boyfriend, but I think, no matter how many boyfriends you have, I can't be one of them. Because we don't know each other at all." While speaking, he looked at Susan with indifferent eyes and cold expression, as if he was looking at a little monkey with poor performance skills. He exuded a strong cold temperament and an attitude of keeping strangers away. Susan, who still wanted to hug Lin, froze in place. The atmosphere froze for a moment. Feeling the strange gazes of everyone around her, Susan wished she could find a hole to crawl into. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but glare at Lin. She had never thought that Lin would be so unromantic and reject her directly. And he said such ruthless words, leaving her with no way out. Such a good-looking face was wasted. He's really not a man, Susan thought secretly in her heart. At this time, Lin had already turned and left. It was too late for Susan to find help, so she could only leave the college in silence. And Andrew followed behind her and kept pestering her. As for Lin En, he forgot about this matter the moment he turned and left. He had no good feelings for such a self-centered person. Such people seem harmless, but in fact, they are all troublemakers. She just found a shield on the road. Didn't she know that her boyfriend would retaliate against the innocent passerby afterwards? Of course, such a self-centered person would never think of this. All they can think of is themselves. Just like Susan, who thinks she can do whatever she wants with her beauty and thinks that all men in the world should revolve around her. Once she is not satisfied, she will complain about everything. A standard vulgar plot. When the authors of the general failed novels can't think of the plot, they will pull out such a plot to promote the development of the plot. Lin En can smell the smell of this vulgar plot without thinking. Because of this, he ignored this self-centered girl and left directly. Putting aside the above, he is not her father, why should he satisfy her unconditionally? Does she really think that she is so beautiful that any man in the world will coax her? Walking on the road, Lin En shook his head. However, from time to time, the sound of Susan and Andrew arguing can be heard from behind. Indistinctly, he also heard the boy say something that seemed quite arrogant. "Woman, you can't escape from my palm." Lin En's mouth twitched. He was wrong. This is not a vulgar plot in the male channel, but a domineering plot in the female channel. Many people already knew the story of Susan and Andrew's breakup and reunion before this. Because it was not the first time that the two of them had a quarrel. It was just that before that, it had been circulated in a small circle. And this time, it caused a sensation in the entire Magic Academy. All because of a passerby in the quarrel between her and Andrew. Lin En. When the farce happened, some of the students watching recognized Lin En's identity. Because of this matter quickly spread throughout the academy. Susan obviously didn't expect it. The passerby she casually pulled at that time was not only the sanctuary mentor in the academy. And it was His Highness Lin En who had a super high reputation on the road. Walking on the road of the academy, I heard the classmates coming and going, all chatting about her and Andrew. Such as saying that she wanted to seduce His Highness Lin En, wanted to become the prince's wife, and wanted to climb up the high branch. In this regard, almost everyone only gave one comment. It's wishful thinking for a toad to eat swan flesh. Susan is a toad, and Lin En is a swan. Susan is very depressed. She listened to her classmates' comments on her and got angry in her room. She was just a freshman who had just enrolled. How could she know that the man was the college's tutor, and how could she know that he was His Highness Lin En? Besides, since he was His Highness Lin En, as a prince, he didn't have the slightest noble gentlemanly manners but embarrassed her in public. This was too abominable. Why don't you talk about His Highness Lin En, but talk about me instead? She sat on the chair angrily. I want to change my reputation. But after thinking about it, I couldn't think of any good way. After all, she was just a teenage girl who had been raised in an aristocratic family since she was a child and had never seen any storms or the world. In her past years, the biggest difficulty she encountered was the relationship with Andrew. And what she could do was to lose her temper and smash things. Apart from that, she couldn't think of anything else. After finally calming down, Susan calmed herself down. She didn't think about the outside world's evaluation of herself, but thought about the relationship between herself and Andrew. We must break up. She showed a firm look in her eyes. Susan was born in a count's family in the empire and was the only daughter of the count. Since she was a child, she was loved by the count's father and mother, and her two brothers were also very fond of her. Therefore, she could get whatever she wanted at home. Gradually she developed a spoiled temper. Of course, women from noble families, as long as they were born in the right lineage, generally had such a temper, which was nothing. Her parents had set her future path since she was a child. When she was just 5 years old, they had already thought about Susan's future. After careful consideration, they decided to arrange a baby marriage for their daughter, and the person they were engaged to was Andrew. Andrew's home and Susan's home were on the same street, and both were counts' families, and they were well matched. And Andrew and Susan grew up together, and they both understood each other's temper very well, and they had a good relationship, so it was not an exaggeration to say that they were childhood sweethearts. In addition, the parents of the two families were also very familiar with each other, and they had lived and died together when they fought for the empire. With such a relationship, it can be expected that their future life will be very harmonious and happy. But unfortunately, both parents ignored the ideas of the two children. After Susan learned about this, she was shy at first, but after reacting, she was still very happy to accept it. Andrew, who regarded Kong Ben as her brother, slowly transformed into Ku Ching in her heart. After all, Andrew was cheerful and flamboyant. Little girls like domineering boys, and Andrew's appearance was also very good. So she accepted it. But unlike Susan, Andrew was very dissatisfied with his parents' restrictions on him. He was domineering and young, and he didn't want to get married early. Moreover, for Susan, because they were too familiar with each other, he didn't feel love. But he didn't dare to disobey his parents' wishes, so he could only do some tricks behind his back. For example, deliberately bringing his new female companion to Susan, often scolding Susan, not giving Susan a way out in front of their mutual friends, secretly saying bad things about Susan. Everything made Susan sad. Unfortunately, Susan had completely regarded Andrew as her husband at this time. In her opinion, no matter what Andrew did, he would change his mind sooner or later and come back to her. But it was precisely because of this mentality that Andrew paid less attention to her. Often the easier it is to get something, the less it is cherished. Every time Susan was angry or even decided to break up, Andrew could always coax her back with some sweet words. Over time, Andrew cared less about Susan. Finally, after Andrew hurt Susan's heart again, Susan, who could no longer bear it, finally decided to break up with Andrew completely. However, Andrew came to her house in person, begging for Susan's forgiveness with a crying voice, and deeply repented of his mistakes. At the same time, he also vowed that he would change his face and become a new person from now on, hoping to get Susan's forgiveness. At the end of the confession, Andrew proposed to Susan. Faced with Andrew's sincere confession, Susan still had feelings for Andrew after all, so she took back all her sadness and agreed to Andrew's proposal. At that time, she kept telling herself in her heart, "After all, I have been in love with Andrew for more than 10 years. Since he promised me, he will definitely treat me well." She even began to enjoy the good life in the future in her heart. But what Susan didn't expect was that after getting married, Andrew once again became the same as before, and he still spent his days drinking and partying outside. And Susan kept telling me in her heart that he was just a momentary youthful spirit, and he would come back eventually. He was still responsible. He still knew how to take care of the family. He still loved me. Susan kept hypnotizing herself, and in the end, Andrew still didn't change his mind, but she had already believed it. She was completely immersed in the dream she had compiled for herself. But dreams, after all, have a time to wake up. Finally one day, Andrew returned home with a young and beautiful woman, and Susan, who couldn't accept this fact, went completely crazy. In order to maintain this family, she trapped herself in her own dream, but Andrew finally broke her dream with his own hands. At this moment, she finally gave up completely. She was so desperate that she helped the couple and then returned home. Her parents took their daughter home and took good care of her, wanting her to be happy again. Under the care of her parents, Susan gradually became cheerful. But perhaps God would never let her have an easy life. Not long after, her father stood on the wrong side in a fight in the empire, his title was confiscated, and his family was exiled. On the way to the south, they were intercepted by hostile forces. In order to root out the problem, the other side actually sent magicians to annihilate them all. At the moment of death, Susan actually breathed a sigh of relief. Death, for her, it was more like a relief. Susan thought her life was over. But who knew, when she opened her eyes, she found that she had woken up and returned to 7 years ago. The day when she just entered the Saint Laurent School of Magic with Andrew. When she figured out her situation, she clearly understood and knew clearly. In this life, she must get rid of that scumbag. She must find her own new life, change her own destiny, and also change the destiny of her parents. Therefore, as soon as she came back, she broke up with Andrew. She suddenly thought of how she had been spoiled since she came to the academy in her previous life. In order to save Andrew, she pushed him away and stood in front of him during the end-of-year trial. As a result, she was seriously injured and was given emergency treatment by the academy's leaders. During the few days she was unconscious, Andrew did not visit her once. He only came over hypocritically after she woke up, brought a bottle of magic potion, said a few words of comfort and left. At that time, Susan felt happy, but now she feels disgusted. This is a complete scumbag. No wonder her parents who loved her always said she had no future. She recalled the regret of her parents for finding the wrong person for her when she returned home from that sad place. She remembered the various scenes of her parents being careful to help her get out of pain and depression. Her father had to navigate various intertwined forces during the day, and he had to take care of her emotions carefully when he returned home. But at that time, she only knew to immerse herself in a failed marriage and couldn't extricate herself. She couldn't see her parents' efforts at all. After rebirth, every time she thought of this, she couldn't help but secretly blame herself. But, now she is reborn and back to the past. Everything still has a chance to start over. When she broke up with Andrew for the first time, walking on the path of the college, she felt her life was so easy for the first time. For the first time, she discovered that the sky was so blue, the grass and trees were so fragrant, the birds were so melodious, and everything in the world was so lovely. After breaking up with this scumbag, she felt that her life had a new meaning. Compared with Susan, Andrew did not take Susan's breakup seriously. He thought Susan just suddenly became upset, and would get better after a while, and then come back by herself. However, what Andrew did not expect was that after several days, Susan still did not come to him. Andrew wanted to find Susan and came to her residence, but Susan's servant said that she had moved away. In order to avoid Andrew, Susan had already placed her residence in the college and lived in the student dormitory. Now, Andrew finally understood. Susan was really going to leave him. Previously, he did not take Susan seriously, and regarded her as a plaything that he could summon and dismiss at will. And who would care about such an existence? But now, when Susan really left, Andrew found himself very sad. Some things have always been by your side, but you don't care. And when you really lose them, you suddenly realize how important she is to you. Those who can't get them are always in turmoil, and those who are favored are always fearless. Just like Susan and Andrew. At this moment, when Andrew realized that Susan really left him, Andrew felt the pain in his heart, and he finally understood. What he really likes is Susan. He must not lose her. I must find her back. With such a mood, Andrew began a series of redemption actions. He dispersed all the beauties around him, and then proved his change with facts, hoping to get Susan's forgiveness. But at this time, Susan had already made up her mind and didn't listen to any explanation and proof from Andrew at all. Because she knew how firm Andrew's oath is now, how hateful he will become in the future. But Andrew still didn't give up. He kept pestering her, hoping to change Susan's mind. The two kept pestering and quarreling, so many people knew about their affair right after they entered school. It was also because of this that Susan used Lin-En as a shield. Susan is a very naive person. She has never changed in her past life or this life. Like many ordinary people, she is easy to follow others and be easily changed by the outside world. But she was very determined to break up with Andrew. No matter how others persuaded her, she would not change. Just like in her past life, she continued to break up and get back together with Andrew, and the means used by the other party to beg for her forgiveness were more than now. But what about taking it over? After Susan chose to forgive him, she still did not have a good ending in the end. Susan had already seen clearly that Andrew was hopeless. His nature was like this, and he would not be changed by the will of outsiders. Instead of trying hard to change Andrew, why not embrace a better future? As for apologies, if apologies were useful, there would not be so much pain in this world. Even though returned to several years ago, Susan would think of the pain she experienced in her past life every time she woke up in the middle of the night. Those pains, like scars, stayed in her heart. Whenever she thought about it, she would feel a dull pain in her heart, and even breathing was difficult to maintain. FIFFLX. Why should I forgive after rebirth? Susan had no intention of compromising. Andrew had no choice but to bring up Susan's parents, hoping that they could persuade them. When he just entered the Magic Academy, Andrew had not yet revealed those qualities, so after learning that the two of them had a conflict, Susan's parents personally wrote a letter, hoping to persuade the two of them to be together. But Susan wrote very firmly in her reply to her parents, revealing all the things Andrew had done to her behind her back. When Susan's parents learned that Susan had suffered such a great injustice from Andrew, they immediately took action. Susan's parents went to question Andrew's parents, and Andrew's parents were also very dissatisfied with Andrew, so they called him back from the Magic Academy and scolded him severely. And confined him to his home. There was a lot of chaos. The two families, who were originally friends through life and death, parted unhappily because of this. Lin En didn't know about Susan's past, but he smelled the same smell from Susan as those children of destiny. Lin En naturally understood. This person is another existence born with destiny. Of course, for now, he didn't feel the existence of system fragments in Susan, so he didn't pay much attention to it. To him, Susan was just a little girl who was too self-centered. Even if she was favored by heaven and had great luck. So what? In the following days, Lin En continued to teach as usual. But soon, he was once again a little annoyed with these stupid students. In addition, Vino planned to add more burdens to his shoulders. He even wanted to give the position of dean to Lin En, but was rejected by Lin En without hesitation. What a joke. I feel a little bored with teaching, and I still want me to manage the entire college. Vino, who didn't get what he wanted, had to settle for the second best and let Lin En pick up the research of magic potions again. Lin En did not refuse this time, but agreed immediately. But he turned around and found Blair, who was concentrating on teaching in the college, and gave him the task of writing the paper. After not seeing each other for 3 years, Blair was still as excited as before. He was even more overjoyed to get this task. Seeing Blair walking around the laboratory excitedly, and looking at his slovenly appearance, which was completely like abandoning his personal life for magic research, Lin En couldn't help but smile. He still remembered Blair's collapse when Lilith entangled him. Although he has changed from a handsome young man to a research dog, he lives a happy life. During the conversation with Blair, Lin En learned that he was also engaged. His wife was from a family personally selected by Blair's Duke father. Both the other party's parents and the woman who was about to become Blair's fiancé were gentle and virtuous, and their family traditions were also good. During the 3 years that Blair was researching in the academy, his fiancé often wrote to him and sent him some daily necessities. When mentioning this matter, Blair had a gentle smile on his face. Obviously, he was very satisfied with his wife. In addition, Blair's cultivation had improved a lot after 3 years of not seeing him. He had already reached the level of a 6-star wizard. At his age, he was a genius in the entire Magic Academy. Even in the advanced classes, there were many people who were not as good as him. It can be said that Blair's fate had been completely rewritten by Lin En. Lin En was also relieved for such an ending. At the same time, he also thought of Lilith. I don't know what happened to the lucky guy with a sallow face after 3 years. Although I don't know the specific situation of Lilith. But Lin En could sense through the system that Lilith's luck was still rising. It was the time when her luck was strong. However, in Lin En's view, such luck was as prosperous as a raging fire and a blooming flower. But how long can all this last? Can Lilith withstand such a great fortune? Now everything she has comes from the system, which is equivalent to a castle in the air and a rootless duckweed. The more she gets from the system, the worse she will fall when the system finally takes the price. Good and bad fortune come from nowhere, but only from people themselves. Lin En, waiting for the opportunity to reap the fruits. And this opportunity soon appeared. After completing another class, Lin En was called to the dean's office by Wei Yu. Vino took a sip of honey tea. Then he looked up at his proud disciple, who was sitting upright on the chair at this moment, and couldn't help feeling a little satisfied. Vino was getting happier and happier with his disciple. Every time Lin En came to his office, even if he was bickering with him, he could keep Vino in a happy mood for a long time. Usually, when Lin En returned to his castle after teaching, and when he didn't meet him for a long time, Vino would come to see his student by asking about Lin Zai's magic progress. Lin En also knew this. But both the teacher and the student understood each other tacitly. This time, Lin En thought that Vino would just make up an excuse as usual, just to see him. But he didn't expect Vino to say something. Soon, the Magic Alliance of the Holy Continent will hold a competition held every 10 years. The competition will be held in the imperial capital of the empire. At that time, the 4 top magic academies on the continent and thousands of smaller magic academies will come to the bed. In addition, there will be outstanding magicians selected by major principalities and kingdoms to compete. Those who achieve excellent results will receive a ticket to a secret realm. And I hope you will be the team leader of the Saint Laurent Magic Academy this time. After all, the venue is in the imperial capital, you can go home and take a look. The Magic League is an organization created by the mainstream of the current orthodox magic world on the Holy Continent. It has been recognized by the Holy Empire and has a base in almost every city under the jurisdiction of the Holy Empire. It has all magic-related unions under its jurisdiction, such as the Alchemy Union, the Potion Union, and the Refining Union. Any magician can go to the local magic union to register and become a registered magician. The Magic League has no binding force on magicians, but as long as they are registered, they can receive relevant tasks from the local union and receive certain rewards. It is a communication and interaction platform for magicians in the entire continent. Vino is the honorary president of the Magic League today. And the Saint Laurent Magic Academy is a president-level unit of the Magic League. In addition, in the Magic League, there are the Holy Empire Royal Magic Academy, the Bohemia Magic Academy, and the Warden Magic Academy. These 4 magic academies are the top 4 magic academies in the Holy Empire. Among them, Saint Laurent is the leader of the 4 magic academies because of its oldest history and the strongest strength. The other 3 are generally weaker. But the Royal School of Magic is slightly stronger among the 3 schools because it is backed by the royal family. In general, Saint Laurent is the strongest, followed by the Royal School of Magic, followed by Bohemia and Warden School of Magic. This ranking is also recognized by the entire continent. Below the 4 major magic schools, there are hundreds of magic schools of all sizes in the entire Holy Continent, but there are a total of 12 schools recognized by the Magic Alliance. The competition organized by the Magic Alliance every 10 years is that these 32 magic schools each have a certain number of places and can skip the auditions. Students from the 4 major magic schools will directly participate in the peak competition. As for other magic schools and many magic forces on the continent, if they want to participate, they need to go through the auditions before entering the official competition. In each competition, any outstanding magician who can compete in the peak competition, as long as he sits in the top 36 positions, will have the opportunity to get an admission ticket to the secret realm. This secret realm is a small world managed by the Magic Alliance. In this secret realm, there are countless natural treasures and the magic elements are very rich. And this is just the most basic. More importantly, in this secret realm, because it is a small world, the world barrier is not thick, so magicians can more easily feel the mystery of magic. The magic laws that are difficult to comprehend in the outside world will be very easy to reveal here. It can be said that as long as you can enter this secret realm, you will have a greater chance of stepping into the Holy Realm in the future. Most of the Holy Realm magicians active on the continent now basically walked out of the secret realm and stepped into the Holy Realm. Because of this, the competition held every 10 years will be sought after by magicians all over the continent. Although the competition only requires young magicians under the age of 30, it still cannot stop the enthusiasm of magicians. Before the competition began, magicians from all over the continent rushed to the imperial capital, whether young or old. The magicians who are over the age hope to watch such a grand ceremony. And the young and appropriate magicians hope to stand out in the competition. Even if they cannot advance to the top 32 in the end, they cannot obtain the qualification to enter the secret realm. But as long as you get a certain ranking, you can also get rewards from the Magic Alliance. After all, in addition to these, the Magic Alliance also gives very generous rewards to the top 100 outstanding magicians. The nobles of the imperial capital will also watch this magic competition. Once they find an outstanding magician among them, they may marry their daughters to him. It can be said that this is a continental carnival every 10 years. It is a huge celebration. No matter what you pursue, no matter what you want. Wealth, beauties, treasures, strength, background, etc. You have the chance to get everything. But the premise is to show your strength. Get recognition from others. Lin En also knows something about this. When he was still a minor, he witnessed a magic competition in the imperial capital. He still has an impression of that lively scene. In fact, Lin En is usually reluctant to join in the fun of such things. After all, whenever there is such a plot, there will be some so-called pretentious and face-slapping plots. It's really boring to watch. But thinking of what Vino said, the location of the competition is in Kyoto. Whether it is his father, the woman that the Majesty of the Holy Empire met before, or Lilith, they are all in Kyoto. 3 years have passed, and maybe it's time to close the net. Thinking of this, Lin En has some intention. Seeing Lin En was interested, Vino added more strength and said with a smile, "If you are willing to lead the students, I can promise you a request that I will not refuse as long as you make it." Lin En was waiting for this sentence. At this moment, "As you wish, my teacher." Lin En did not hesitate, bowed slightly and said with a smile, "Go, take our students and get a good result in the competition." The god of magic, Vino, gave the students of Saint Laurent Magic Academy a heartfelt and beautiful blessing. The competition of the Magic Alliance is held once every 10 years. It is a grand ceremony that shocked the entire continent. There are still 3 months before the competition, but the magicians on the continent have already started to set off and rush to the imperial capital. If you can see from the sky at this time, you will find that all over the continent, countless young and old magicians, no matter what their cultivation is, are heading towards the imperial capital. They have all kinds of dreams and goals, like a rolling torrent and 100 rivers like the sea. Cut through the waves and march forward bravely. In Saint Laurent Magic Academy, many students have already started working hard for this competition. As a president-level academy in the Alliance, Saint Laurent Magic Academy can directly skip the auditions and formal competitions and enter the peak competition directly. And it has 1/10 of the 300 seats in the peak competition. That is, it directly has 30 top 300 candidates. In order to select these 30 academies to represent the Magic Academy, the academy also organized a competition. In the end, 16 students from advanced classes and 14 ordinary students won 30 places for Saint Laurent Magic Academy. It is worth mentioning that Rosa and Adeline are among them. With 1 month left before the competition, the participating team of Saint Laurent Magic Academy is ready to set off. That morning, all the participating students gathered in front of the square. After confirming that the number of people was correct, Lin En, as the mentor leading the team, and 2 other sanctuary mentors who assisted him, escorted the students together. The magic flying boat slowly rose. Finally, under the gaze of thousands of students and teachers in the college, it disappeared into the sky. The speed of the magic flying boat is very fast. There are many flying beasts on this continent, and they are very powerful. Although many holy domain magicians can fly, they often fly at low altitudes when flying long distances in order to avoid encountering large-scale flying beasts. In the sky, it is their home ground after all. Even if it is the holy domain, it is difficult to get any benefit once encountering a powerful group of flying beasts. Even if it can be defeated, it is still a trouble. The magic flying boat does not have this worry. It flies directly in the sky. Along the way, it will certainly encounter many groups of flying beasts. Those with low strength will feel the holy domain aura on the flying boat and avoid it from a distance. Even if they are strong and insist on coming up to fight, they will often be killed by the magic weapons on the flying boat. In this way, they crossed thousands of waters and mountains smoothly and came to the imperial capital. The imperial capital, located in the most central area of the Holy Continent, it is the capital of the Holy Empire, the most prosperous, huge and lively city in the entire continent. In this huge city, there are more than 5 million permanent residents. In addition, a large number of foreign populations arrive in the imperial capital every year. Even if it is the Magic Alliance competition held once every 10 years, countless magicians from the continent will pour in, which is enough to accommodate it. When Magic Africa is still far away from the imperial capital, all the students standing on the flying boat can see 10 huge cities standing on the horizon in front of them. At this time, the morning light is just rising, and the light of the rising sun still has some red glow, shining on this huge city. As the sun rises slowly, more and more sunlight is projected on the city. The sunlight gradually dispels the other half of the darkness, and from a distance, it seems that the city is waking up with it. What a heavy city. Such a huge city, I have never seen it before. Shocking. Some students stood on the side of the ship, looking at this imperial capital under the morning light, and couldn't help but exclaim sincerely. Although most of these students are nobles, many of them are nobles in the kingdoms and principalities under the empire. The largest cities they have seen in their lives are also local heavy cities. It was their first time to visit the imperial capital. Just like country folks entering the city, they would naturally be amazed by the largest city on this continent. Even those knowledgeable Saint Domain mentors, although they did not speak, also looked over many times. In their long years, although they came to the imperial capital many times, they did not live there often. Each time they came, it was a long time. And each time they came, this huge city had earth-shaking changes. Hundreds of years ago, the Holy Empire had not yet unified the continent, and this was just a small town. Later, as the Holy Empire gradually became stronger, this town located in the center of the continent began to be gradually built. By the time of the first emperor of the empire, this place had become a big city. After the development of the 2 generations of the empire, it has now developed into the largest city on this continent. Every time they came, they were impressed by how great the power of human beings is. They could create such a huge miracle. In comparison, Lin En seemed much calmer. He had lived in this important city for more than 10 years, so he was not surprised. In addition, he had seen many large cities in his previous life, and there were many cities that could accommodate tens of millions of people. A city that could accommodate millions of people was at most a medium-sized city, so it was not worth him making a fuss about it. The imperial capital was a no-fly zone. No matter who came here, they had to land obediently and not fly over the sky. Otherwise, once they were discovered by the holy magicians and holy knights stationed in the city, they would be shot down and killed. This is an iron rule. No one can cross it. But the magic flying boat belonging to Saint Laurent is naturally not within the scope of this rule. The magic flying boat flew directly over the city and then went straight into the city. Some strong men in various places in the city were just about to intercept, but then they saw the pattern on the magic flying boat and Lin En standing in front of the flying boat, and immediately returned to silence. At the city gate, some magicians who were about to enter the city were stunned after seeing this scene. Why can that flying boat fly over from the sky? Why didn't the holy magicians guarding the imperial capital kill it? Why can they fly, but we can't? Some magicians asked questions. For a while, the city gate seemed noisy. Faced with these questions and doubts, the guards at the city gate rolled their eyes and said, "What are you arguing about? Be honest. This gate soldier is just a 2-star knight. Low strength and low position." But the tone of his speech was very impolite. If it were somewhere else, ordinary soldiers like him would not dare to speak to magicians like this. After all, magicians are very noble, and any magician has a very superior status. In some remote places, a 1-star magician can be favored by some nobles and thus obtain the title of lord. Every magician is the darling of heaven and earth. They are respected and powerful. It is rare to see them on weekdays. Even if they meet, they will definitely treat them with courtesy and never dare to provoke them easily. But in the imperial capital, even if they are just city gate guards, they see countless magics every day. And these magicians, when they arrive at the city gate, must be respectful and honest to abide by the discipline. Even facing these city gate guards, they dare not be presumptuous. Who dares to be presumptuous in the imperial capital of the Holy Empire? Under such circumstances, the soldiers naturally have no respect for these country magicians. As expected, after the soldier said this, these magicians dared not speak. Seeing this scene, the soldier nodded with satisfaction, and then said, "Open your eyes and look carefully, the magic flying boat is engraved with St. Lawrence Ma Wang Hao logo." As soon as these words came out, the entire city gate suddenly became quiet. Saint Laurent. The only one who can use this logo on the mainland is Saint Laurent Magic Academy. This is the top institution on the mainland. They have some privileges, isn't this what they should be? For a while, these magicians didn't dare to say anything nonsense, and they lined up honestly. Just, whether it is the city gate guards or these magicians. What they don't know is ye. The reason why Saint Laurent Magic Academy has such privileges and can fly directly into the city gate is not only because it is the top magic school on the continent. It is also because His Highness Lin En entered this school a few years ago. In addition, Vino is willing to become the Empire's national mage. Therefore, Saint Laurent Magic Academy has more privileges in the Empire. The root cause is still because of Lin En. At the headquarters of the Magic Alliance in the imperial capital, Lin En and his party were welcomed by the elders of the Alliance headquarters. They led the students to stay at the headquarters, and then exchanged greetings with Lin En. Most of these elders were 8- and 9-star magicians, and they were old and basically hopeless in the Holy Land. Those strong men in the Holy Land concentrated on studying magic and domains, and naturally did not pay much attention to the mundane things in the Alliance. So they were handed over to these hopeless old men in the Holy Land. Although they had no talent for advancement in magic, they burst out with unparalleled enthusiasm in managing the affairs of the Alliance. The Magic Alliance was managed by them in an orderly manner and flourished. Although it was inevitable that all kinds of things would take advantage of their positions, they would turn a blind eye to them in consideration of their contributions. As long as it was not too excessive, they would not pay attention. The elders also understood, so no matter how they did things, they would maintain certain rules. They would not go beyond it. As for people who are obsessed with power, they are naturally very respectful to Lin En, a prince of the empire, who is extremely powerful in both talent, background and strength. At the welcoming meeting, they reported to Lin En the development and prospects of Alliance in recent years. This was praised and pointed out by Lin En. The greetings lasted for half an hour. Until Lin En showed a hint of fatigue, they respectfully withdrew. After seeing them off, Lin En just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard someone come in to report. Someone came to the palace. Lin En let out a long sigh and asked them to call the people in the palace in. A moment later, a man dressed in decent clothes, wearing reading glasses, and looking like a deputy butler came into the house with several well-dressed servants. After seeing Lin En, the old butler immediately led the servants to salute. "Your Highness Lin En, I am your humble servant, and I am honored to salute you." "Get up." Lin En sat on the chair and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty asked you to come, is there something?" This old butler is an old man in the palace. Including Lin En's father, he has waited on 3 majesties before and after. Now he has always been by the side of the current majesty, serving him. Lin En's father trusts him very much. And the old butler is also very powerful, and it is said that he has the strength comparable to the Holy Land. It is a trump card for the royal family. Hearing Lin En's question, the old butler said respectfully, "His Majesty is very happy to hear that you are back, and wants you to come back to see you." "Oh." Lin En said with a smile, "Are you sure it's not that woman who wants to see me?" The old butler remained silent, but his waist bent even more. Although the old butler did not speak, sometimes silence is equivalent to giving an answer. "It's really interesting." Lin En smiled and said, "I really want to see what kind of charm this woman has. In just 3 years, she has fascinated the emperor of the empire to this extent." The old butler still did not speak. In the past 3 years, he saw with his own eyes that the emperor was fascinated by that woman. Although up to now, the woman has not made any unreasonable demands, and the emperor has not neglected the government because of this. But he still feels that this is a bit inappropriate. It's just that as a servant, there are some things he can't say. After hearing what Lin En said, the old housekeeper agreed with Lin En and hoped that Lin En could give him some advice, but he could not say it out loud. At this time, Lin En said, "Go back and tell His Majesty that it is too late today. I will go to the palace to see him tomorrow." "Yes," the old housekeeper agreed. Then, seeing that Lin En had no other instructions, he planned to leave. Just before turning around, he hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Your Highness has been away for a few years, and His Majesty misses you very much. Tomorrow when you enter the palace, Your Highness can talk to His Majesty from the bottom of his heart, and comfort His Majesty." After saying that, he hurriedly bowed and said, "I am too talkative, please don't blame Your Highness." "No problem." Lin En waved his hand and didn't care. Watching the old housekeeper leave with the servants, after he Ojbi disappeared from sight, Lin En's mouth curled up. "Is this a subtle reminder to me?" The old housekeeper's last sentence seemed to have no meaning, but in fact it was clearly giving Lin En some signals. The meaning expressed was nothing more than that Lin En had been away for a few years, and His Majesty had been completely fascinated and almost forgot about His Highness. It can be seen from this that the woman is not easy to mess with. If your Highness wants to persuade His Majesty when he enters the palace this time, it is best to start with family affection and let His Majesty wake up. Avoid being hostile to that woman, which is easy to suffer, etc. Lin En naturally understood the good intentions. RTU. Why bother? Lin En sneered. He will enter the palace tomorrow. Then, he will see what kind of person this woman is. The next morning, Lin En changed into a magic cell. Accompanied by the male and female servants who had been waiting at the door for a long time, he went to the palace. His Highness Lin En's first return after 5 years away naturally attracted countless people's attention. And the pomp and circumstance must be extremely grand. The road from the headquarters of the Magic Alliance to the palace had been sorted out as early as midnight last night. There were knights guarding both sides of the road. There were also magicians supported by the royal family in the hidden place, secretly alert, protecting Lin En's safety. Although with Lin En's cultivation, if he really appeared at this moment, it was still uncertain who would protect whom. But this was their duty after all. Clean water opened the way, and flowers were laid out. It looked magnificent and grand. On the roadside, the people of Kyoto were all watching, wanting to see the beauty of His Highness Lin En. For a time, the crowd was full. It could be said that the streets were empty. But unfortunately, Lin En was sitting in a carriage, and the surroundings were closed, so they had no chance to see him. This made the people a little disappointed. However, seeing His Highness Lin En return to the imperial capital was enough to make them excited. Since the day Lin En was born, countless bards on the continent have sung his deeds. People born in the past 10 years have almost grown up listening to Lin En's stories. Even the elderly are already familiar with Lin En. And as Lin En became a disciple of the God of Law, he achieved the Holy Land in a short period of time, which pushed his reputation to its peak. On the Holy Continent, I don't know how many young people regard Lin En as an idol. And I don't know how many young magicians regard Lin En as the direction of progress. In addition, during the first 16 years when Lin En could not practice, although he had always been a member of the royal family, the development policies he proposed to the empire have been circulated in the court. Many important officials of the empire admire him very much. It can be said that Lin En's prestige in the Holy Continent is even higher than that of the current emperor. In terms of popularity, he is only second to the God of Law Vino. But when it comes to popularity, the God of Law Vino has to admit defeat. It's the same old saying. Who can not like a beautiful thing? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.